Hey friends, hope you're all doing well. We're doing okay too, just really tired since we've been working non-stop. We wanted to answer a question many of you ask: how does our publishing process work? Most of our audiobooks are first posted on Patreon as paid content. They stay behind a paywall for a few months. After that, they become free to access on Patreon forever. Then, a few weeks later, we upload them to other platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, our community hasn't been growing much, and we could really use your help. Please share our site in your Facebook groups, Discord servers, Reddit threads, Twitter, X, or with any friends who might be interested. Every little bit helps and we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for being with us and supporting what we do. Chapter 1: The Tortoise and the Hare. May of 2119, humans started to turn into dolls. Those walking on the street, eating in restaurants, or half-dressed in changing rooms, the unfortunate ones' movement paused in the moment of transition, their smiles frozen on their faces, as they all became motionless human-shaped dolls. Without warning, without identifiable cause. People were perplexed, terrified, driven to madness, and filled with despair. They marched in protests challenging the suspected terror attacks of mysterious organizations, spread rumors of extraterrestrial invasions on the internet, and some even evacuated to the countryside. They did everything they could, but still, the people around them kept turning into dolls one after another. Gradually, people became numb. Those who should go to school, went to school. Those who should work, went to work. Life continued as usual. But there was a new segment on the daily news broadcast. After reading the news, the television newscaster would announce in a standard tone, "If you notice someone around you has turned into a doll, please call the emergency hotline at 123, the relevant departments will handle this promptly." Handling meant sending the dolls off to research institutions. If the scientists found something significant, that was good. If they didn't, the relatives would be notified to claim the dolls. Whether to bury or place them in their homes was up to them. Baiyoi watched the news for a while, then noticing the time, she took the remote and turned off the television. She then pressed a button on her wheelchair and headed towards the dining room. She had a disability in both legs, her parents divorced in her early childhood and they both started new families. Perhaps due to guilt, they never held back on expenses for Baiyoi. They let her live in the most luxurious villas and hired expensive caretakers, but they never seemed to have time to spend with their daughter. But Baiyoi didn't mind it. She was long accustomed to being alone. The dining room clock ticked on, with the minute hand pointing to 12:10. Baiyoi ate lunch precisely at noon every day, never late, but now, there was no food on the table. With silence all around, the ticking of the clock emphasized the tranquility of the luxurious villa. Baiyoi waited for a bit, then noticed the smell of burnt food coming from the kitchen. She adjusted her direction and rolled over in her wheelchair. The caretaker was standing with her back towards her, frozen beside the gas stove, with her hand still holding the pose of stirring food, but she didn't move. The caretaker had become a doll, just now. Her face was the same, but the material had wholly changed, from fresh flesh and blood to plastic skin, glass eyes, synthetic hair. The previous caretaker had fled back to her hometown, and this one had only been here for 2 days. Baiyoi hadn't even memorized her name yet. Now, the woman had become like this. She gazed at the sight for a moment, then rolled her wheelchair over, turned off the stove, and as advised on the news, dialed the emergency hotline 123. The line was busy. Baiyoi thought for a moment, then decided to call her mother. Since the caretaker was hired by her mother, she should be able to contact the caretaker's family. Once the call connected, she was surrounded by the sounds of conversations, laughter and music, all accentuating her solitude. A real nuisance. She explained the situation briefly and then hung up the phone. The house was silent, as was outside. The scorching sun was baking the earth. The pond in the garden reflected the glittering light. A hibiscus drooped its purple petals under the intense sunshine. Everything seemed normal, but Baiyoi knew that the world had already become abnormal. At 2 in the afternoon, the sound of a car engine echoed outside the villa. Through the window, Baiyoi saw a tall man ringing the doorbell. After a moment of thought, she went to the kitchen to get a folding fruit knife, and then wheeled towards the door. Through the iron gate, she could see the man standing tall, with a stern look on his face, and a pair of deep and quiet eyes under his thick eyebrows. He looked vaguely familiar, but she couldn't recall where she had seen him before. "Are you YY?" His voice hesitated slightly, bearing the unfamiliarity of their first meeting. "I'm Shenmo, your mother heard about what happened here and asked me to pick you up." Baiyoi was startled. Shenmo? No wonder he seemed familiar, he was Uncle Shen's son. He looked a bit like his uncle. To clarify, Uncle Shen is her mother's good friend, as well as her business partner. In Baioi's opinion, Fallback option would be a more appropriate description of Uncle Shen's role. After a moment of silence, Baiyoi put her fruit knife back in her pocket and opened the door. Shenmo looked at the girl in front of him. With pale skin and soft long hair, her light blue dress covered her from neck to feet. Just like her name indicates, Bei, white, Yu, young, Wei, tiny, one can't help but associate her with words like pale, young, delicate, weak, and so on. She looked very well behaved, not at all difficult to get along with, contrary to what her Aunt Wang had described. Pack your things. I'll drive you to Yangzhou, said Shenmo concisely. Baiyoi shook her head. I'm not going. Shenmo was surprised and raised his eyebrows. It's unsafe in the city now. Those who could have already evacuated. If you stay here with nobody to take care of you, you'll die. Baiyoi lowered her head to look at the exquisite pattern on her dress. I'm not going. No matter where I go, with my condition, I'll die. Shenmo had not expected such obstinance. He wasn't good at persuading people and even worse at cajoling children. Without a word, he walked into the house asking, which room is yours? Watching Shenmo, Baiyoi asked suspiciously, what are you trying to do? Ignoring her, Shenmo went into the house. After walking around, he found her bedroom with certainty and started to pack her clothes and necessities. The girl followed him, her expression somewhat forlorn. After packing the clothes, Shenmo stood in the room, looking around and asked, where's the medicine? Baiyoi permanently resided in a wheelchair, and medicine was a necessity. She stayed silent. He didn't bother asking again. Soon, the room was all in disorder. Sitting in her wheelchair, Baiyoi watched him rummaging through her things, gripping her hands tightly. With a low voice, she said, Do you think you're amazing and noble for saving a poor, helpless girl? Have you ever thought about the consequences of taking me away forcefully? Once we reach Yangzhou, how am I, a physically disabled woman, going to survive? You know, I need help even to eat and go to the bathroom. I have to wear adult diapers for long journeys. She took a deep breath. You don't understand anything. I'm not going with you. At the end of her words, her voice was hoarse, bearing suppressed sobbing. Shenmo looked at her, stayed silent for a moment, and then he lowered his voice. You're right. I don't understand. But at least there's one thing I understand. If you stay here, you'll die faster. If you leave, there might be hope. Hope? A chill ran through Baioi's heart. Even her own parents no longer wished to see her. She was living life like a zombie, without the intention of continuing, even if the world remained normal. She was a hopeless wreck. Shenmo approached Baioi, his dark eyes heavy with intensity, speaking in a calm and steadfast voice. Don't worry, I will safely get you to Yangzhou. Baioi bit her lip. She had no choice. Shenmo pushed Baioi out of the villa, towards an off-road vehicle parked by the roadside. He lifted her from her wheelchair. She was lighter than he could ever imagine, frail but not making his arms uncomfortable. The girl in his hold was soft and weak. Her face against his chest, a faint fragrance intertwined with a scent of dairy-infused rose, along with a whiff of medicine. It formed a peculiar aroma, inducing a feeling he couldn't quite describe. Looking at her tense face, he softened a little, reassuring her again, I'll drive faster. We will get there in an hour and a half. There is someone at the other end to take care of you. Don't worry. Apparently bearing a grudge against him for his coercion, Baioi turned her face away, refusing to respond. Shenmo gave a faint smile, closed the car door, and sat in the driver's seat to start the car, but it didn't take him long to realize he had miscalculated. The situation was more serious than he had imagined. Dolls had appeared on almost every road. While the reason for people turning into dolls was unknown, it was common knowledge that areas with a high density of dolls were dangerous, and everyone tried to avoid such roads. Shenmo began detoring. After more than an hour, he finally arrived at the motorway entrance. But even the motorway wasn't peaceful. As far as the eye could see, there were cars, about 60 or 70 of them, haphazardly stopped right in the middle of the road. Some of the cars were crashed, with no sign of the passengers' survival. At the end of the line, there were many people like them who had just reached the motorway. These people stood outside their vehicles, craning their necks to get a better view, hesitant about whether to move forward. Shenmo got out of the car to ask about the situation. Baioi was leaning against the car window, listening to people's conversations. What should we do? Should we still go? Go? There are dolls all over the front, how can we pass? If we don't go, do you want to wait here to die? The nearest city, only Yangzhou and Taizhou don't have anyone turned into dolls. What about other roads? Are there dolls on other roads? If this continues, we are all going to be trapped here and die. Honey, what should we do? A woman with long hair was sobbing. It must be the end of the world. We're all going to die. Her husband seemed to have no ideas as well, smoking anxiously. without uttering a word of comfort. After listening for a while, Baiyue lost interest, closed the car window, and enjoyed her own tranquility. Shenmue got back into the car. Baiyue asked him, "Will we turn into dolls if we pass this road?" Shenmue pondered, "Let's see the situation first. If it doesn't work, we will find another road." Baiyue didn't have much trust in him, and muttered under her breath, "There are dolls on other roads too." At that moment, there was commotion up ahead. Everyone was surprised. Looking up, they saw a blue pickup truck slowly moving forward, apparently testing the waters. Several other cars saw this and followed cautiously, maintaining a safe distance. It seemed some people were getting impatient. After all, there was no safe place in the city. Almost every road was filled with dolls, and to leave the city would require risks. The driver of the blue pickup truck was a bald, strong man. He steered the car carefully past several vehicles filled with dolls. Seeing no abnormality, he unconsciously sped up. Once he reached the open area that was safe, he leaned out of the car, waving to the people behind him, "This road is passable." The atmosphere was uplifted by his words and the cars behind started moving forward. Some people laughed and made casual conversation with the bald man, "Buddy, we owe you big time this round." The others also relaxed, their faces lit up with smiles. "Seems like there's nothing to worry about." Shenmue started the car, following the convoy. Baiyue responded indifferently with a no. On the motorway, the cars advanced at a snail's pace, each person was exceedingly careful and cautious. Baiyue quietly leaned against the car window. As the car moved ahead, she saw one human-like doll after another. They stood like window display mannequins from a clothing store, their eyes hollow, their poses rigid. Turning her head, she saw two dolls in a red car opposite them. The male doll was driving, and next to him sat a female doll. The woman's stomach was noticeably bulging, obviously she was pregnant. Baiyue couldn't help thinking, had the child in her belly also turned into a tiny doll? Was it also made of plastic skin, glass eyeballs, and fibered hair? What exactly had they experienced at the moment they turned into dolls? Was it possible that their bodies could not move, but their consciousness was still clear? This thought sent shivers down her spine. She withdrew her gaze and stopped looking. Ding. Welcome to the doll game. The theme for the game is Tortoise and the Hare. The rules are as follows. First, those who refuse to participate in the game will turn into dolls. Second, those who lose in the game will turn into dolls. Third, those who successfully complete the game will be rewarded with a doll. A strange voice resounded by her ear. Its tone was beautiful enough to be divine. For a moment, Baiyue was stunned. "Hey, did you hear?" She was about to ask Shenmue in front of her. But her vision blurred, and in the next instant, under the clear blue sky was a vast stretch of green grassland. What was happening? Baiyue was dumbfounded by the scene in front of her. Just a second ago, she was sitting in Shenmue's car. The next moment, she was sitting on the green lawn. And so were their fellow companions. Everyone, with a look of astonishment, was staring at the racetrack outside the lawn. On the track hung a banner with 4 exaggerated characters that were hard to miss: tortoise, hare, race, run. Chapter 2: The Strange Situation. What on earth is happening? Baiyue clutched onto the grass beneath her, her fingers digging into the soil. The touch came with a cool, damp sensation, a reality she couldn't deny. This wasn't an illusion, and it certainly wasn't a dream. They had truly been transported from a highway to this unknown location in an instant. What was that voice talking about a game earlier? Could this be the reason why people were transforming into dolls? Would they turn into dolls if they couldn't leave this place? A shudder of fear crawled into her heart, her previously calm heart started to pound abruptly. Holding on to her numbing legs, Baiyue was breaking out in a cold sweat. Shenmue stood not far in front of her, alert and observing their surroundings. His face looked just as unsightly. The warm sun shone upon the land, fluffy white clouds stretched out across the sky, a gentle breeze carried the faint scent of grass. In this beautiful weather perfect for outdoor picnics, everyone was too terrified to make a move. "Where are we?" A long-haired woman looked up in horror. "Weren't we just in the car?" "Honey, I want to go home." "Let's just go home." The woman's husband pushed her away, his face filled with anger. "Where's the bald guy? Didn't he say it's all safe?" "Yeah, he said we could leave, which is why we followed him." "Damn it. I knew there was something off about him. Otherwise, why would he be so eager to be the first one to proceed? He must have led us here on purpose. Damn that bastard." Everyone started cursing, seemingly forgetting their gratitude towards the bald man just moments ago. Baiyue silently counted the number of people. Including her, there were 17 in total. The bald man really was gone. But why? Everyone took the same path, why wasn't he here too? Could the game's activation have some kind of hidden secret? Strange. She was plunged into this eerie situation, but why did she feel a tingle of thrill along with her fear? What was she expecting? Everyone, listen up. A middle-aged man in a suit began to speak, blaming others won't solve anything at this point. We need to stay united if we want any hope of getting out of here. I noticed earlier that this place looks like a sports field. There's a track up ahead. Who's willing to come with me and check it out? The man's Mercedes and his professional attire gave his words extra weight. Many agreed with his proposal. A young woman wearing glasses timidly spoke up, "Is it dangerous?" Another blonde young man retorted her, "So what if it's dangerous? Do you plan on doing nothing and just wait here to die?" The girl looked at her boyfriend, seeming hurt. The boy was very smooth and quickly chimed in, "Bro, chill, she's worried about our safety, after all, we have no idea where this place is." The middle-aged man contemplated for a moment. While it's not an invalid concern, it seems currently safe. However, this place is still unknown to us. Maybe we should leave the women and the elderly here, and the men can come with me to check the path. After mulling it over, Shenmue turned to Baiyuai and said, "You wait here, I'll go ahead and check it out." "No way." Baiyuai firmly grabbed his arm. Her firm no was unwavering and loud, drawing the attention of everyone else. Shenmue was the tallest among the men. He had a lean build and an imposing demeanor. His rolled-up sleeve revealed his firm forearm, clearly a valuable asset in terms of combat power. If he didn't go, the power of the scouting party would be greatly undermined. The blonde young man gave her a sidelong glance. "Cutie, in matters of life and death, we have no room for willfulness. Don't we need to figure out what's going on to find our way back? If it's life or death, what difference does gender make?" Baiyuai suddenly seemed like a different person, her tone sharp as she retorted, "I don't know any of you people. If something happens to him, who's going to look after me, a cripple? I bet you all would run faster than rabbits." Holding on to Shenmue, Baiyuai stared directly into his eyes. "Shenmue, you promised me. You promised to get me to Yangzhou safe and sound. But now, are you going to leave me so soon?" A few of the women also hesitated, looking to their male companions. If all the men left, leaving them with the old and the children, what would they do in case of an emergency? Although Baiyuai would undoubtedly be the worst off, they wouldn't fare much better either. "Honey, I'll go with you. I'm scared staying here alone." The long-haired woman changed her mind. "Why don't we all go together?" Someone suggested, "I don't see much to explore here. Besides the grassy field, there's a track, and beyond that, a forest. So, are we supposed to cross the forest?" "I don't know, let's check out the banner first. There's something odd about it. Let's go take a look, there might be some clues." As everyone spoke, they started walking towards the banner with the tortoise and the hare race. Shenmue bent down and lifted Baiyuai, catching up with the others. Baiyuai wrapped her arms around his neck, her eyes red and her voice back to its delicate softness, but her stubbornness remained. "Are you having regrets? Do you think I'm a burden? Well, it's too late for regrets now. Shenmue, don't even think about shaking me off." As if to prove her words, Baiyuai tightened her hold around his neck, her look defiant. Shenmue winced at her surprising strength. He realized it might be because she had grown up without her parents, which made her insecure. With this thought, Shenmue's annoyance faded. He comforted her, "I won't abandon you." Baiyuai looked at him, half believing. Shenmue was bewildered too. Given Baiyuai's physical and mental condition, why hadn't Aunt Wang taken her in? "Look, there's someone beneath the banner." As everyone turned to look, so did Shenmue, cutting off his train of thought. As they got closer, the figure under the banner became clearer. It was a man dressed like a gentleman, in a white bow-tied shirt and a black tailcoat. On his head was a lifelike rabbit mask with long ears that were particularly noticeable. The red eyes of the mask were fixed upon them, not blinking once. Chapter 3. Where's the end point? The whole scene seemed too bizarre, so everyone slowed down, looking warily at the rabbit-headed gentleman. "Hello everyone, I am the inspector of this game. Welcome to the doll game." Despite the distance, the rabbit-headed gentleman's voice was clear in the air, a gentle female voice. However, at this moment, even the gentlest voice couldn't calm the fear in everyone's hearts. "Who are you? Did you bring us to this place?" Someone with a lot of nerve spoke out. The rabbit-headed figure was holding a large top hat in her hand, her voice gentle and calm. "Please, all players, take your positions at the start line. The race begins when the starting gun fires, and crossing the correct finish line will take you to the next round. The game consists of 3 rounds. Hey! I'm talking to you, can't you hear me?" A burly man strode over, grabbing the rabbit-headed figure by the neck. "Stop playing tricks with your mask. Speak up. How do we get out of this hellhole?" The rabbit-headed figure was tall and slender, and her gentle female voice made her unthreatening. It was because of this that the burly man brazenly grabbed her throat. Even with her slim neck in the grip of the burly man, her voice echoed again without any hindrance. This game is divided into 3 rounds. The race begins when the starting gun fires, crossing the correct finish line. Enough. The burly man roared in a temper, I'm not here to play games. Tell me how to get out or I'll strangle you. Boom. Blue flames exploded, followed by a muffled blast. The burly man's body trembled violently for a moment. Just like he'd been hit by lightning, his body turned charred black and disintegrated into ash on the ground. The rabbit-headed figure tilted her head, lightly brushed off the black ash from her shoulder. The fur on her neck was clearly exposed, finally making everyone realize that she wasn't wearing a mask. She genuinely had a rabbit's head. Ah! The monster, the monster. A long-haired woman collapsed on the ground, her legs shaking. Her husband grabbed her arm, intending to escape. But when he turned back, he found that hundreds of rabbits had appeared on the open, flat grassland. Each rabbit was as big as a wolfhound. They were snow white, with blood-red eyes. Under their 3-lobed mouths, sharp teeth gaped menacingly, grinding against each other, making a sound that sent chills down one's spine. The scene was too horrifying for Baiyuai to bear and she instinctively pulled into Shenmo's arms. She raised her head to look at Shenmo, finding his face pale but his demeanor still calm, unlike the others, who were panicked and confused. The rabbit-headed figure stood calmly in front of them. Please, all players, take your positions at the starting point soon. Baiyuai looked where it was pointing towards the starting line, where those giant rabbits were also moving. They were crawling into the running lane, squished behind the starting line. A race of the tortoise and the hare. Now that the rabbits were here, did that mean they were the tortoise? May I ask? Baiyuai's teeth clenched as she raised her hand to ask, do I still have to participate in the race in my condition? The rabbit-headed figure turned its gaze towards Baiyuai, lingering a moment before apologizing in a courteous and gentle manner. I see, my apologies for the oversight. Soon after, it extended its gloved hand into the top hat and pulled out a pair of crutches. Baiyuai's heart skipped a beat. They were just like her crutches. No, they were her crutches. The folding crutches she had packed in her suitcase. If the rabbit-headed figure could easily take things from the outside world, did that mean they had to go along with what it said to leave this place? But even if she was given her crutches, there was no way she could outrun those dog-sized rabbits. At this time, Shenmo, who had remained silent this whole time, asked, where is the finish line? The rabbit-headed figure raised its hand, pointing to the other end of the running lane. Chapter 4 The correct finish line. The end point and starting point echoed each other in the distance, marked by a semi-transparent sign. Because of its semi-transparency, no one noticed it previously. The length of the endpoint sign was consistent with the track. The material was unclear, yet it was able to hover high in midair. At this moment, the rabbit-headed man pointed at it, and 2 extremely bold black characters appeared on it. Endpoint. Below the endpoint, there were 2 arrows, pointing to the number 1 track on the left and the number 2 track on the right. Usual sports fields usually have 6 or 8 tracks, but there were only 2 tracks here. The track is 200 meters long, and you can proceed to the next round by going through the correct endpoint. The game ends after 3 rounds, the rabbit-headed man explained the rules. Will those rabbits run with us? Shenmo glanced at the rabbit not far away. Of course. The rabbit-headed man answered in a still mild voice, the rabbit is a critical part of the tortoise and the hare race. You have to avoid being caught by them. Baiyuai pursed her lips and cautiously asked him, what happens if we are caught up? The rabbit-headed man made no comment. Although the man didn't comment, somehow, Baiyuai felt as if he was laughing. The woman hiding behind her husband asked with a tremble, do they bite? Bite? The others silently cursed in their hearts, look at those teeth. It wouldn't be surprising even if they said these rabbits eat people. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, the rule explanation ends here. Please follow me to the starting point. The race is about to begin, said the rabbit-headed man as he turned around, supporting his top hat with one hand and headed towards the starting line. Everyone exchanged glances, looking at each other hesitantly, not moving forward. The charred corpse on the ground was still there, exuding a faint burnt odor. The sunlight shone on it, and the semi-transparent endpoint sign in the distance reflected the brilliant light, seemingly beckoning to everyone. Finally, unable to resist the fear in their hearts, they followed the rabbit-headed man step by step with heavy footsteps. Shenmo looked down at Baiyuai. I might run faster with you on my back rather than in my arms. But if you're afraid of those rabbits, I can carry you. The rabbits were obviously aggressive, so the back and legs would be the parts most easily injured if they were attacked from behind. You'd better carry me. Baiyuai also calmed down. Running not only requires speed but also balance. We need to be agile to avoid the rabbits. It would be a lot of trouble if you were carrying me. They stopped and adjusted their positions, with Baiyuai lying on Shenmo's back. They ended up seeking refuge at the back of the group. Are you scared? Shenmo asked her. I am, Baiyoi answered in a muffled voice. No one would not be afraid encountering such a situation. She asked Shenmo in a meek voice, what about you? If those rabbits run very fast. If they run very fast, he would undoubtedly be dragged down while carrying her. Cradling Baioi's legs, Shenmo stepped forward. Remember what the rabbit-headed man just said? He said there would be 3 rounds in total. If the rabbits are fast, you could finish the race in 1 round instead of scheduling 3 rounds. Baiyoi was a bit surprised. She hadn't expected Shenmo to have analyzed it so far. She looked at the starting line ahead. The giant rabbits looked horrid. However, careful observation revealed each rabbit was a little out of sorts. They were limping, twitching, scratching and kicking at the ground. Some were even biting their flesh in a frenzy. If they ran, their speed might not be so fast. After thinking, Baiyoi whispered to Shenmo. The rabbit-headed man kept emphasizing passing through the correct endpoint, so, if you want to win the race, you don't need to be the first one over the finish line. Instead, you have to run faster than the rabbits and find the correct endpoint. Upon hearing this, Shenmo said, which side is the correct endpoint? Baiyoi fell silent. Since there were 3 rounds in the race, the endpoint for each would certainly be different. It could be on the left, or maybe the right, and a hint might be given during the 200-meter run. Even if there wasn't a hint, guessing blindly would give them a 50% accuracy rate. The problem now was, they didn't know what the consequences of running to the wrong endpoint would be. Chapter 5 Little White Rabbit. So wide everyone came to the starting line of the track. Despite there being only 2 lanes, it was so wide that 16 people standing in a line side by side didn't give off a cramped sensation. Behind them were ghastly giant rabbits. The rabbits pushed each other, baring their teeth and making hissing noises from their mouths and noses. Their hot, terrible-smelling breath along with their soft fur almost touched the ankles of the people in front of them, appearing as if they will bite off a chunk of flesh given one more step closer. The woman with long hair was trembling, one of her hands clutching her husband's clothes hem so tightly, tears streaming non-stop from her eyes. Her husband scolded softly, "Let go. How am I supposed to run with you holding on to me?" The young man with the yellow hair coolly watched the couple as he squatted to retie his shoelaces. The girl with glasses took off her high-heel sandals, thought for a moment, picked up the sandals, and tightly held on to them. The middle-aged man in a suit took off his jacket, anxiously staring at the finish line ahead of him. 16 people, each silently preparing themselves. Baiyoi lying on Shenmo's back, asked nervously, "Are you good at running?" "Shenmo, I'm decent." Baiyoi thought for a moment before asking again, "Am I heavy?" Shenmo hoisted her up a bit, with a casual tone, "You're okay." Why he kept saying okay? Baiyoi felt uneasy. She was about to ask again when a voice overshadows her thoughts. On your mark, a starting pistol was taken out of a tofet and raised high by the rabbit-headed individual. Everyone's nerves tensed up momentarily. A figure suddenly surged past the starting line. Boom. A bolt of blue lightning, like a colossal blade, leapt from the hand of the rabbit-headed individual into the body of the figure that ran too early. Baiyoi could clearly see the individual's body twist, turn into charcoal, and shatter. The air seemed to have hardened. Not a single person spoke. A pulverized body couldn't be much worse than this. The rabbit-headed individual withdrew his hand, speaking in a voice that was both gentle and indifferent. "Starting before the gun is against the rules. Contestants, please listen for the signal gun." Baioi's hands and feet turned icy cold as she silently laid atop Shenmo's back. The last thread of hope in her heart had vanished. She whispered, "Shenmo, after they start running, you can follow. Don't worry about the rabbits biting me. Being bitten by a rabbit would at worst result in losing a chunk of flesh, but jumping the gun would mean losing your life. Don't worry." Shenmo bent slightly forward, assuming a ready position. "Both of us won't die." "On your mark!" The rabbit-headed figure raised the starting gun once again. Bang! As the starting gun sounded, everyone dashed past the starting line in unison. A man nearby started to run a beat late, and was immediately pounced upon by a rabbit, releasing a blood-curdling scream. "Husband!" The woman with long hair wailed, her pace slowing. She didn't know whether to keep running or go back to save him. Someone yelled, "Don't worry about him. Run." But it was too late. The rabbits were like zombies that had caught a whiff of human flesh. The moment someone slowed down, they would immediately pounce and tear into them. The woman screamed, but no one dared look back. Everyone ran forward for their lives. "Run faster, faster. Even faster than that." Shenmo, with Baiyoi on his back, was positioned in the middle of the group. At the very front was a skinny man who ran exceptionally fast, leaving a good distance between him and others. The finish line at 200 meters ahead didn't seem far, nor close, but they were quickly closing the distance. At that moment, The semi-transparent finish line marker suddenly changed. The word finish disappeared, and in its place was a phrase, "Little bunny, white and bright." Chapter 6 The surefire winning method. Little white rabbit, white as can be. What does it mean? As my brain was processing the question, my feet didn't stop running. The first person ran headlong, crossing the finish line on the left without thinking twice. The second person arrived beneath the signboard, hesitated as he looked at the first person, then back at the approaching rabbit. Not willing to waste time, he also went to the left. The third person paused, hesitated for 2 seconds, then sprinted towards the right finish line. One by one, each person reached the finish line. Later on, the time pressure ramped up. There was no time to think. Some went left, some went right. "It's the right side," Baiyi said, leaning on Shenmo's back. "Little white rabbit, white as can be, both its ears are sticking up." "Two as in two." "The answer is the second lane, the right." Shenmo sprinted past the finish line on the right. The last few people staggered across the finish line. The people on the left snapped out of it, realizing their mistake. But they found an invisible barrier separating the two lanes. They couldn't cross. Simultaneously, the rabbit charged into the first lane. It surged like a roaring white wave, accompanied by a sharp, salty and gutsy cold wind. Screams, curses, desperation. Then, a grueling dash for survival. The track was a circle blocked on both sides. To evade the rabid rabbits, those who missed the finish line had no choice but to keep running. The girl with glasses sat crying on the ground, unable to bear the sight of the carnage. She screamed at the participants hoarsely, "Hurry up! Run! Run!" But it was too late. Sprinting 200 meters was already pushing their physical limit. Continuing meant slowing down, while the rabbits showed no signs of tiring. They caught up, jumped, bit, and tore. Pitiful screams reverberated across the field. The people on the ground struggled and rolled, ending up bloodied and skinless. From their flesh, white hairs grow one by one. The white hairs kept increasing, growing denser. Eventually, they turned into raging giant rabbits, their eyes dyed red with fresh blood. At the beautiful stadium, every person felt as if they had fallen into an icy hole, their bodies freezing. They had just witnessed their companions horrifically transforming into rabbits. In the distance, the rabbit head was waving at them, his voice ringing clearly, "Players, please return to the start line for the second round." Second round. The crowd was deathly pale. Unable to refuse, fearing retaliation, and devoid of any time to calm their terror-stricken hearts, they walked back like lifeless puppets. Yes. At this moment, they were mere puppets in Rabbit Head's hands, devoid of freedom and will. Baiyi lay on Shenmo's back, her heart sinking heavily. Initially there were 17 of them. After the first round, only 9 remained. Could she and Shenmo really survive 3 rounds? "You should walk a little slower," Baiyi whispered to Shenmo. "Slow down, stall a bit more." "I have that much stamina," Shenmo replied in a low voice. "It's just the problem that's a bit tricky." Difficulty was one thing, but the hardest issue was the timer. The panicked people running for their lives likely didn't even have the time to comprehend the question. How could they make the correct choice with a clear mind? From seeing the question to crossing the finish line, they only had 2 or 3 seconds at the very most. Any longer than that, they would have been caught by the rabbits. Thus the challenge here was not just knowledge, but lightning-fast reflexes. Baiyi muttered, "A track lap is 400 meters. If we chose the wrong finish line and couldn't go back, we'd have to run another 400 meters to reach the right lane. That's essentially running 600 meters at top speed. Unless you're a professional athlete, you couldn't possibly manage." Moreover, Shenmo was carrying her. If they missed the 200-meter finish line, the fate of Baiyi and Shenmo would be to undoubtedly become rabbits. "Shenmo, I don't know which question will be in the next round." Baiyi shook her head slowly. "Actually, the question itself doesn't matter. It's the order that's important. There is a way to win the game with 100% guarantee." Shenmo's steps faltered slightly. "Win the game with a 100% guarantee?" "Yes." Baiyi subtly observed the expressions of the others and murmured quietly, "And it is likely. Someone has already thought of that method." Chapter 7 Which side to choose? The remaining 9 people returned to the starting line. Baiyi whispered in Shenmo's ear, "During the race, keep an eye on the young man with blonde hair and the middle-aged man in dress pants. Try to stay away from them." Shenmo cast a sidelong glance at the 2 men after hearing her words. The blonde-haired youth was average in height, dressed in a tight t-shirt and jeans, his biceps protruding as if he were a regular at the gym. The middle-aged man in dress pants was panting, bending at the waist, his right hand holding his jacket, his face flushed from exertion, sweating profusely. Obviously older, he had not yet recovered from the 200-meter run. The middle-aged man is weak, he will certainly not sit back and await his fate. Baiyi said quietly, He might do something underhanded. Shenmue hefted her slightly higher. Hold on tight. If you fall off, I won't look back for you. Baiyuai clung to him closely. Don't worry, I won't let go even if it kills me. Ready, the rabbit head raised the starting gun. Everyone focused on the finish line. Held their breath. Bang. The starting gun fired, and they all hurried off the starting line. The rabbits pursued closely, not letting up. Shenmue, carrying Baiyuai, was in 7th place, the middle-aged man was last, while the blonde was leading the race. Baiyuai kept her guard up, watching as the middle-aged man gradually approached. She subtly reached into her waist pocket. Hold tight. Shenmue warned irritably. About to pick up the pace. He suddenly accelerated, passing 2 others, widening the gap between him and the middle-aged man, and firmly held 4th place in the group. Baiyuai released a sigh of relief, taking her hand out of her pocket and wrapping it around Shenmue's neck. Suddenly, a loud shout came from behind. She instinctively looked back, only to see the middle-aged man muster all his strength to throw his jacket. It covered a young man's face, causing him to stumble. In his panic, he also dragged down a bespectacled girl running alongside him. Like a domino chain reaction, these 3 fell to the back of the pack. Baiyuai didn't look back anymore, a chill settling deep in her chest. She heard screams and wails. She could almost picture the scene where the rabbits were brutally attacking the 2, and how the middle-aged man seized the opportunity to escape. At such a critical moment, what would one not do to survive? The finish line was once again close. The sign at the finish line, where finish had previously been displayed, now revealed this round's question: the gallbladder of a turtle is in the lobe of the liver. Everyone was stunned. The previous question was a childish nursery rhyme, but this was a serious biology question. The young man with blonde hair who was leading the race suddenly stopped, standing under the sign, unsure which side to choose. The liver is divided into a left and right lobe. Is the tortoise gallbladder in the left or right lobe? Unless there was a vet among them, who would know the answer. The second person to reach the finish line also halted, standing there with the blonde, contemplating, their faces pale. Left side? Or the right side? Lane 1? Or lane 2? Do you know the answer? Shenmue slowed down, asking Baiyuai on his back. Baiyuai didn't make a sound. Her dark eyes stared unblinkingly at the 2 people ahead, her lips slowly pressing together. Suddenly, the blonde-haired young man made his move. He forcefully pushed the second-place runner into the left finish line. The rabbits, originally scattered on 2 tracks, seemed to sense that someone had answered the question wrongly, and they all madly rushed to the left side. Like traffic suddenly changing lanes on a high-speed road. Seeing this, the blonde man didn't hesitate and ran to the right side. The answer was the right lobe of the liver. Chapter 8 Who is the weak one? The people behind suddenly understood the intention of the blonde guy and sped up, dashing towards the right finish line. On the other track, the person who was pushed in was already overwhelmed by the wave of rabbits. In the swarm of bunnies, another frantic rabbit was added. Even though everyone knew this act was tantamount to murder, no one condemned it, no one complained. The survivors just sat where they were, panting heavily, tears and sweat flowing together. Everyone looked as disheveled as if they had just been pulled out of the water. In the distance, the rabbit-headed person waved to everyone again. Please return to the starting point for the 3rd round of competition. The 3rd round. The final round. As long as they could survive the final round, this damn game would end. Everyone tried to pull themselves together and slowly walked towards the starting point. Shenmue hoisted Baiyuai on his back again and walked at the end of the group. Baiyuai could feel the cold sweat on him. Learning from the lessons of the 1st round, everyone had done their utmost in the 2nd round. Most passed the finish line, only 2 people died, now there were 7 remaining. But this didn't mean the death toll would lessen in the upcoming 3rd round. This was because after 2 consecutive life and death runs, everyone's stamina was on the brink of exhaustion. That is to say, by the time of the 3rd round, everyone's speed would drastically reduce. Especially that middle-aged man, his legs shaking even just walking, he couldn't run at all. Baiyuai also noticed that the bespectacled girl who had been dragged down didn't die, but was injured, her entire arm soaked red with blood. The high heels in her hand were also bloody, the long, thin heels made people shudder after being stained with blood. The middle-aged man perhaps felt guilty, he consciously avoided her. Along the way, the atmosphere was even more oppressive than before, filled with a heavy gloom. No one spoke, maybe they were feeling desperate, or maybe they were each contemplating strategies for the next round. Shenmue and Baiyuai still lagged behind at the end of the line. He asked her, "Is this what you meant by 100% sure way to win the game?" "Yes," Baiyuai nodded gently, "the rabbits can enter the correct finish line, so as long as one person runs in the wrong direction, we can judge where the right finish line is from the rabbit's reaction." Shenmue smirked, "So, they want us to kill each other?" Beiyuai remained silent. It was indeed so. On the surface, the competition is about physical strength. But in fact, those who could break the bottom line and attack their peers would have a higher survival rate. Like that middle-aged man, or that blonde youth. You're quite good at reading people. Shenmue developed a new understanding of Beiyuai and curiously asked her, why did you think those two would strike? Nothing, just a feeling, Beiyuai replied. A feeling? Shenmue laughed, is that woman's intuition? Beiyuai made a face, sorry, it's a cripple's intuition. As someone who's disadvantaged, you become very sensitive to any malice shown by those in power. After listening, Shenmue pondered, it's interesting. Actually, it's just bullying, Beiyuai explained lightly. When people are dealing with those weaker than themselves, once they harbor evil intentions, they naturally display aggressiveness. Abusive husbands, child-beating parents, elder-abusing caregivers, these people are ordinary in other aspects of life. Why is it that when they face their wives, children, or the elderly, they can't control their tempers? It's because of the disparity in power. The strong can amplify the malice in their hearts without any scruples, they can possess, humiliate, and even take the life of the weak. As she spoke, she couldn't help but pause and softly said, you probably wouldn't understand. Even though they weren't well acquainted, her mother had told her that Shenmue's son worked at the National Security Administration. He was their most promising young officer. He, being such a person, would probably never understand what it feels like to be at a disadvantage. I understand now, Shenmue replied. At this point, they had returned to the starting line. The rabbit-headed man once again raised the starting gun. See, Shenmue crouched low, ready to sprint. In front of it, we are all weak. Ready. The rabbit-headed man gave the command. Chapter 9 The final round. Third round of racing. Bang. As the gunshot rang out, everyone dashed off the starting line. Even though everyone was running at full speed, their pace noticeably slowed after tens of meters. Unexpectedly, Shenmue surged to the front, carrying Beiyuai on his back and securing the lead. Initially surprised, Beiyuai soon figured it out. Shenmue had, on purpose, conserved his energy during the first 2 rounds. Although a risky strategy, it provided them with an increased chance of survival in the 3rd round. From behind came panic-stricken shouts and curses. Beiyuai turned her head to see a middle-aged man with a pale face, streaming with sweat, his eyes resembling blood-filled pools. At some point, he had unfastened his belt, swinging it wildly, whipping those who were running in front of him. Those unfortunate enough to be hit either stumbled several steps, or fell in their tracks. Even the pursuing rabbits caught some lashes, seeming to possess some level of understanding. They skillfully evaded the man, preferring to pounce on the injured. 2 more people died. Luckily, Shenmue was at the front and a safe distance away from the man, as a few lashings in such a brutal environment could have dire consequences. You guys wait for me. Wait for me. The man whipped his belt in frantic pursuit, now left with nobody to shield him and more rabbits closing in on him. His survival until now was truly a desperate fight. Beiyuai had expected him to be among the first to die. You guys wait for me. I don't want to die, I know the answer. The desperate man managed to shout while running at his limit, whoever helps me, I'll tell them the answer. Wait for me. Regardless of whether this was his desperate final plea, someone was swayed, and slowed down. A young man with blonde hair took off his t-shirt and forcefully hurled it back. It enveloped a rabbit's head perfectly. Whether it was covered in sweat or blood, the frenzy among the rabbits was temporarily halted, as they turned on the blinded rabbit. Once again, the middle-aged man dodged death. The new question appeared on the finish sign, rabbit's uterus, left. Desperate to prove his worth, the man shouted hastily, rabbits give birth to a litter every month. The answer is 1. Choose lane 1 on the left. Despite the given answer, nobody dared to believe it easily. The blonde man first glanced at the girl with glasses. Having learned from previous rounds, the girl with glasses kept to the outer edge of the lane, maintaining a distance from everyone. The blonde man then turned his gaze to Shenmue, his eyes revealing the intent to kill. Testing the answer with Shenmue carrying the crippled girl would undoubtedly be the best option at the moment. Beiyuai was always on guard. Seeing him approach, she immediately pulled out a folded fruit knife from her pocket and flicked it open. The blonde man halted in surprise. Nevertheless, he quickly regained compose, appearing completely unfazed by the knife in Beiyuai's hand. Feeling pity for the helpless crippled girl, Shenmue said, "Give me the knife." Beiyuai passed it to him, saying, "I actually know the answer to this question. Rabbits have 2 uteri. The answer is lane 2, to the right." Her voice was neither loud nor quiet, everyone remaining could hear her, but no one dared to believe her. Who knew if she was just trying to confuse the blonde man by lying? "Hold on, it's going to hurt a bit," Shenmue stated abruptly. "What?" Beiyuai didn't understand before her body was suddenly airborne. She was thrown by Shenmue with a shoulder throw all the way into the right finish line. With a thud, Baiyoi felt as though all her bones were shattered. But she couldn't care less about the pain. She scrambled to get up and look for Shenmue only to see herds of rabbits, like a white nightmare, swallowing up both Shenmue and the blonde man. Chapter 10 Gigantic Lightning. Baioi's heart almost comes to a halt. If Shenmue were to die at this point, she wouldn't survive either. The girl with glasses who had been running along the edge wheezes to the finish line. The middle-aged man arrives stumbling and fumbling, his body full of injuries, but fortunately, he has managed to save his life. But Shenmue and Blondie are still trapped in that white expanse. The rabbits are kept outside the finish line, encircling the two men layered on layer, gnawing, roaring, and attacking like mad dogs. Baiyoi frantically widens her eyes, trying to see the situation inside the rabbit herd. Her pupils contract with fear, worrying that the next thing she might see could be the transformed monsters covered with rabbit fur. A crimson body is thrown over. It's Blondie, severely injured. His throat has been bitten open, blood splattered all over the place. Then Shenmue breaks through and leaps gracefully across the finish line. As soon as he crosses the finish line, the rabbits outside immediately fall silent, almost as if the bloodthirsty zombies had suddenly lost their target and become slow and stiff. The rabbits are retreating. In twos and threes, they head towards the grassland outside the track. The middle-aged man kneels down, utterly drained, without an ounce of strength left, lips trembling, muttering, I survived. I survived. At last. We've survived. The final four. However, Shenmue isn't concerned about this. He walks over to Blondie to examine him, finding that the changes in Blondie's body have stopped. Although some parts of him have grown fluffy white rabbit fur, he hasn't completely transformed into a rabbit, he still retains a human-like figure. Shenmue then checks for Blondie's breath. He is no longer breathing. Did the changes stop because of death or because he reached the correct endpoint? Shenmue frowns, deep in thought. Baiyoi suspects Shenmue's behavior. How could he have the leisure to care about others after just barely escaping death? She questions suspiciously, what are you trying to do? As Shenmue turns to look at her and is about to speak, a horrifying scream erupts from beside him. Baiyoi and Shenmue twist their heads almost simultaneously. The girl with glasses, who was catching her breath moments ago, had somehow reached behind the middle-aged man and used all her strength to push him out of the finish line. That horrifying scream was from the middle-aged man. The scattered rabbit herd is stirred up again, they coalesce and rush back towards him. Incredibly fast. The middle-aged man looks terrified as he tries to crawl back over the finish line, but his limbs are weak and his reactions slow. He is torn apart, devoured and submerged by the rabbit herd. And then, he disappears. Another frenzied rabbit joins the race. Baiyoi is speechless. She didn't expect it to end like this. The girl with glasses kneels on the ground, covering her face, crying hysterically, he deserved to die. He deserved to die. He killed so many people, killed Axiao, and deliberately gave everyone false answers. He deserved to die. The rabbit herd has run far away. Not a single one remains, all have disappeared into the vast forest around, returning to peace. From a distance, the rabbit-headed man approaches with a gentleness that almost feels eerie. He announces in his strange voice, attacking competitors is against the rules. A feeling of foreboding rises in Baioi's heart. Right on cue, the blue blaze appears once more in the next second. It's a huge bolt of lightning. It springs from the palm of the rabbit-headed man and strikes the girl with the glasses. Beyond measurable electric current, unimaginable high temperature, the girl's body in a split second transforms into a pitch-black piece of charcoal. Thud, it collapses on the ground, shattered. The air freezes. Baiyoi is chilled to the bone. The girl who was weeping grievously just a moment ago has now been scorched right before her eyes. She looks at the debris on the ground, a chilling air emanates even from the seams of her bones. What has happened is too horrifying. Chapter 11 1/10 of me. Why wasn't that man punished when he also attacked others? Shenmue asked. The rabbit man was not stingy in his explanation. The inspector's duty is to ensure the smooth operation and settlement of the game. So, players who have already cleared the game cannot be attacked after the game ends, because it would affect the game's settlement. In the same way, players cannot be attacked before the game starts, as a reduction in the number of players might hinder the game's progress. Only during the game can one act as they please. Congratulations on clearing this game. The rabbit man said disrespectfully in front of them, holding up his oversized hat. The tortoise has finally beaten the hare and deserves a reward. You can choose to receive a turtle victory medal or select something else from the competition field. It took many things out of its hat, as if it was performing a magic trick. There was a small, exquisite starting gun, tiny colored flags from the starting line, and a red ribbon used as the finish line. Shenmue asked, what are these things for? The rabbit man gave a faint smile upon hearing this. Its face had always been expressionless to the point that at first, people had mistaken it for wearing a head cover. But now, it smiled. Its three-petaled mouth lifted in a strange arc, appearing delighted as if it had found an interesting toy. The purpose of the reward can only be known once you receive it. The rabbit man gazed at the two of them with a smile, giving away nothing else. So, what is your choice? Shenmue chose the starting gun. Although it was not a real gun, it still looked intimidating. Moreover, he had a hunch that this gun was not ordinary, since every time he heard the gunshot during the competition, he felt involuntarily compelled to run. As for the other items, Shenmue couldn't figure out their uses at the moment. What about you? The rabbit man looked inquisitively at Baioi, tilting its head. You're quite unique. You didn't run a step, but still won the race. So, I'm quite interested to know, what reward will you choose? Baioi bit her lip, slowly raised her hand, and pointed in a certain direction. The rabbit man glanced at her uncertainly, then looked down at itself, confused. It asked, is the reward you're choosing me? But I don't think it's within the rules to choose the inspector as a reward. There's no such rule. Baioi quickly interrupted it. The moment she heard the word violation, she instinctively remembered the horrifying image of the girl in glasses being struck by lightning. Her nerves tightened as she yelled, you didn't announce this rule, so you cannot claim that I violated it. It's the biggest violation to arbitrarily determine others as violators without clear rules. The rabbit man silently looked at her. Baioi bit her lip tightly, stubbornly standing her ground. She knew the risk was high, but she was not willing to accept it. She felt like a fool, tricked into participating in a baffling race where so many had died, and now she was expected to accept a few toys as a reward. She just couldn't accept it. That's why she decided to take a gamble. She stared at the rabbit man, and stated, word for word, you just said that we could choose any other items from the game field as our reward. You are also on the game field. The silence hung in the air for a long time. A long time. All right then. The rabbit man gave in. Baioi was stunned, somewhat surprised. It was that easy. Technically, the inspector should not be part of the rewards. However, you make a good argument. It was my negligence not to explain the rules clearly. The rabbit man said, elegantly courteous, I'm willing to give you 1/10 of myself as your reward. 1/10 of itself? What did that mean? Baioi furrowed her eyebrows, only to see the rabbit man extend his hand into the oversized hat again. It pulled out a rabbit figurine. The game rewards have been settled, so. Goodbye. The rabbit man smiled at her, I will remember you. Baioi widened her eyes at his words, but before she could ask anything, her sight was again overwhelmed by a blinding white mist. She involuntarily closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, she was back in the car. In her hand, she held a soft rabbit figurine. Chapter 12 Communication Paralysis. Baiyoi's face was slightly pale as she immediately looked at Shenmue in front of her. In his hand, he held a small toy gun. They were still on the highway. The car had stopped unexpectedly at some point, and the surroundings were quiet, save for the sound of the wind. Their eyes met, both of them clearly understanding that what had just happened was not a dream. Saying nothing, Shenmue got out of the car to inspect the other vehicles. Everyone who had participated in the tortoise and hare race game, save for the two of them, had been transformed into dolls. They couldn't speak or breathe, their rubbery flesh connecting their spherical joints, their eyes now dull, lifeless marbles. These people had lost all signs of life. Baioi murmured, so this is it. Fail the game and turn into a doll, pass the game, get rewarded with a doll. So this was it. This is why the world had taken such a turn. As if the fog had been lifted, the clear view turned out to be an endless darkness. Unknown fears spread like tidal water, tension or trembling, with a subtle excitement and stimulation concealed within. Baioi silently held her rabbit plush, lost in complicated thoughts. Shenmue, his face grave, returned to the car. We need to leave this place first. Okay. The highway was straight and smooth, seeming to have no end. Only a single vehicle sped along the empty road. Baioi sat in the car, looking at the repetitive scenery retreating rapidly outside the window, her expression somewhat dazed. This was madness. Game, doll, reward. These concepts all felt absurd to her. If every place with a doll has a game, wouldn't that turn the city into a game level? And the world into a game map? What about Yangzhou? Was Yangzhou really safe? Thinking about this, Baioi quickly rummaged through her bag for her phone, only to find that there was no signal. Calls could not be made, and the internet was not connecting. Turn on the radio. Baioi suddenly realized something. Shenmue seemed to have noticed something as well and turned on the car radio. There was only a crackling noise from the radio. Baioi stared unblinkingly at the radio. Shenmue looked at the road ahead, one hand on the steering wheel and the other pressing the channel button once every 2 seconds. The continuous static echoed inside the car, lingering. After doing this more than a dozen times, he stopped, turned off the radio and said, "There's no signal." The communication system had collapsed. Phones, internet, radio. All were now useless. When did this happen? At the start of the game? No one knew. Baiyui's face became even paler. She didn't care what the world would become, but she cared about herself. If the end of the world was truly upon them, how would she survive? She clutched the plush bunny tightly, thinking, this annoying farce is less fun than a bloody biochemical crisis. Shenmue glanced at her through the rearview mirror and asked, "Do you have any clues about the bunny doll in your hands?" The seemingly childish plush toy was allegedly the 1/10 me game reward. Baiyui pursed her lips in hesitation. Of course, she had clues. In fact, as soon as she touched the rabbit, related information appeared in her mind. This sensation was bizarre, yet inexplicably natural. However, could she trust Shenmue? After considering it, Baiyui finally responded, "This rabbit can release electric energy within a 2-meter radius, with the highest energy reaching up to 1/10. While saying this, she slightly curled the corner of her mouth and continued, "It doesn't specify the voltage or current value, so it's unclear how powerful this 1/10 actually is. Plus, it needs charging before use." Chapter 13 The Despised One charged the battery? Shenmue said with an incredulous laugh. Whoever could pull them into a game was obviously the product of incredibly advanced technology. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to think of it as a gesture of an alien civilization. But the rewards bestowed by this technological civilization require a battery charge? It's pretty down to earth. "Mine is a one-time use tool," Shenmue said while driving and exchanging information with Baiyui. "It's a command gun. Once the trigger is pulled, everyone within a 10-meter radius of the shooter makes a full-speed run. The effect may vary depending on distance, environmental factors, and individual will strength. The shooter is not affected by the gunfire." He picked up the toy gun, lightly tossed it to the back seat. "This is of no use to me. You take it. It might save your life at a crucial time." Baiyui caught the gun and pondered, could it be that the player's level is too low to receive such high-level rewards, and so their power got significantly reduced? She speculated, maybe it's for the balance of the game, otherwise, it would be too weak. Under normal circumstances, who would need such a thing? A gun that could make the opponent run like mad without any reason and a close-range pistol that shoots out lightning strikes. These items were obviously designed for the game. "Do you think there's plenty of these kind of games out there?" asked Shenmue. Baiyui, "Isn't it obvious?" Shenmue gripped the steering wheel without replying. Baiyui thought about his odd behavior earlier in the game, furrowed her brow and asked, "Do you know something?" Shenmue raised an eyebrow, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. Baiyui said, "In the game, there was no need to save that blonde kid, but you risked yourself to pull him out of the rabbit swarm. After that, you kept observing his body changes. Are you focused on him?" "No, that's not right, you don't even know him. As a senior officer from the National Security Administration, there's no way you'd know such a street thug." Thinking about Shenmue's profession, Baiyui realized, "You're here to investigate, aren't you?" Her face suddenly turned cold. She said indifferently, "You didn't came to pick me up, you just happened to be investigating." The quickness of the girl's mood changes amused Shenmue a little. Just after a life-and-death experience, she's being petty about such small things. It's hard to tell whether she's still a child at heart, or it's just her being oversensitive. Perhaps it's both. "I am here to pick you up," he responded. "I was in the area performing a task when I received a call from your mother. I came here specifically for you." Baiyui's expression didn't soften, her tone remained cold. "We're not related at all, why would you go out of your way for me? You just happen to be in the area, and it's all just a favor. I know my worth, no need for sweet talk. You're not my babysitter." She is smart, leaving Shenmue speechless. Both felt silent. The off-road vehicle moved ahead. Baiyui broke the silence first. "You came to execute a task, was it successful?" she asked. Shenmue, focusing on the road ahead, shook his head lightly. "No." "What kind of task?" asked Baiyui. Shenmue, "Find a person." Baiyui paused for a moment, then asked tentatively, "A scientist?" Shenmue laughed. "Close enough, an old professor." Baiyui, "Then you didn't find him?" "The lab was empty, no people, no dolls," Shenmue added. "We searched in the area, all my team members got turned into dolls. I don't know why I was the only one who was unharmed. Then later, I received your mother's call." Shenmue raised his lips into a small smile and asked, "Are you satisfied now?" Baiyui smirked coldly. "You almost lost your life, yet you still had the leisure to pick someone else's daughter. It was on the way, Shenmue said with a faint smile. Baiyoi, Humphrey. She let out a huff but then felt a bit taken aback. Shenmue did not have to pick her up, but he did as he had promised her mother. She should not have been expecting more or complaining about him. She was a person generally despised by others, and anytime anyone treated her a bit nice, she should be grateful, right? Having this thought, her face regained calmness. There was no longer any sign of resent, or any expression at all. Chapter 14 I will not abandon you. After they moved far away from the troubled area, the SUV slowly reduced its speed. Shenmue halted the vehicle. Why did you stop? Baiyoi asked. A bottle of mineral water was handed to her. She was momentarily stunned before reaching out to take it. After a few rounds in the game, dehydration has kicked in. Shenmue popped open another bottle and began to drink, his jawline and Adam's apple forming a masculine curve as he let his head tilt back. Baiyoi watched him for a while, then she too lifted her chin to drink, taking small sips reminding one of a lamb drinking from a brook. Once relaxed, the body's various sensory requirements returned. Not only still thirsty, but she also felt tired, her muscles meticulously limp. This game isn't just a simple simulation of reality. The fatigue left in your body feels quite real. Shenmue crumbled the empty bottle, making it emit a crisp noise. Don't rush to hit the road yet. First, we should get to a service area to check things. Ideally, we could give a call to Yangsu. Pausing a bit, he then said, in the meantime, we can charge your rabbit. Whether or not it can really release electricity, they would have to see the effects after charging it. Baiyoi nodded in agreement. Taking a rest in a suitable place was essential. Given their current state, if there were another race between the tortoise and the hare, they might fail to pass. Shenmue once more revved the car, preparing to hit the road again. That's when Baiyoi asked, if something happens in Yangsu too, what's your plan? Shenmue paused in surprise, stopping as he was about to start the car. Staring at the cold chiseled profile of his face, Baiyoi calmly said, you promised my mother you'd take me to Yangsu. You have no obligation to care about whether I live or die there. Besides, you have your mission. You should be returning to report. Once we reach Yangsu, we'll part ways. Isn't that right? Still speaking, her eyes gradually grew colder. It's the end of the world. Who can care about someone else's life or death? You came to pick me up, it was your duty, a good deed. However, if you deliver me and then abandon me, honestly, Shenmue, you might as well let me fend for myself right now, I won't blame you. The atmosphere froze. But Baiyoi didn't care, anyway, she was always an unlikable person. Shenmue put down the car keys and turned to her. Baioi's clean, shiny eyes stared directly at him, not backing down, her lips tight in a show of stubbornness. Come here. Shenmue gestured to her with a beckoning index finger. She frowned and leaned closer. What? Shenmue stretched out a hand and took hold of her chin. Her plump, baby-like face immediately squished out of shape, her lips pouting. Her stubborn look now took on a childish quality. Baioi's brow furrowed even more, she muttered curses in her heart. Listen well, I'm only going to say this once. Shenmue, holding her face, spoke in a tone like an impatient gentleness, I won't throw you away and disregard you. Got it? She turned her face away, unable to wriggle out of his hand. Shenmue pinched her a bit more like one would a doll. Did you hear me? Did you get it? Baiyoi moved her lips, I heard you. Satisfied, Shenmue let go, turned back, and twisted the car keys. The engine roared softly. He glanced through the rearview mirror at the back seat. Baiyoi covered her face, her eyes flashing angrily at him. A smile crept onto the corner of Shenmue's lips as he hit the road. He finally figured out Baioi's temper. A typical tough nut, if you're nice to her, she thinks you pity her, feels uncomfortable, and deliberately picks quarrels with you. Better to be a bit tough, it's easier and less bothersome. I am, after all, older than you by a few years. You should have a little more faith in me. Shenmue said, gripping the steering wheel as he spoke with a light smile. In the rearview mirror, the girl's gaze seemed disgusted, and she looked out the window with a cold face, ignoring him. It seemed she had developed a grudge against him. Chapter 15 Service Area. Half an hour later, Shenmue and Baiyoi arrived at the rest stop. A group of people had gathered at the rest stop, about 20 in total, a mix of men and women, old and young, all huddled in the restaurant. The original staff of the service area was nowhere to be seen. When Shenmue pushed in the wheelchair, all eyes turned towards the door. Seeing it was just a man and a disabled girl, their faces fell in disappointment. Ever since the world was thrown into chaos, people had been waiting for redemption. Whether it was the assistance from government organizations or the salvation espoused by religious groups, anything would do. Even as little as a light in the dark was better than the confusion and despair of not seeing any hope. Shenmue glanced at the people in the restaurant. Sensing the gloomy atmosphere of the rest stop, he pushed Baiyuai into the nearby supermarket. The shelves in the supermarket had been mostly cleared out. They found an electrical outlet and began to charge the bunny. Even though the charging set was low-end, it utilized high-tech charging methods. All they needed to do was place the fluffy rabbit near the socket to charge it. No plug or direct contact necessary. They had no idea when it would be fully charged. This thing didn't give a percentage like most electronics, its charge depended entirely on the user's perception. Baiyuai tried to gauge it for quite a while but couldn't figure it out. "Describe it," Shenmo said. Baiyuai asked him, "Do you have a swimming pool at home?" Shenmo, "Why?" Baiyuai, "It feels like using a thin hose to fill up a swimming pool. Can you guess when it will be full?" Shenmo, "Well, that's one vivid way to describe it. Charging was slow." Baiyuai, impatient, picked up the bunny and stated her need to use the restroom. She hated being subject to such physiological needs. The folding cane needed to be hung on the side of the wheelchair, toilet paper and wet wipes stored in a cloth pocket on the other side. If there was no accessible toilet, they would also need to carry a small stool. Shenmo wheeled Baiyuai to the bathroom, commenting, "This is the first time in my life that I've been in a women's restroom." Baiyuai gave a chilling retort, "You're just entering the women's restroom. It's not like I asked you to pull down a woman's pants." Having said that, she thought about the past when not just using the restroom, but bathing, massages and such were all taken care of by a nurse or nanny. Now, she had to rely on a man she hardly knew. She felt a surge of disgust. Disgust at Shenmo, but even more so at herself. But pulling down a woman's pants should be something you're quite familiar with. Her mood worsened, and her tone became more abrasive. Shenmo merely gave her a sideways glance. As for pulling down a woman's pants, this was indeed his first time. But arguing over it would simply be immature. He knew well of Baiyuai's unpredictable mood swings. The moment anything touched on her sensitivities, she would turn aggressive, sharp as a porcupine. He couldn't help but feel amused. Such a soft, cute face trying to put up a fierce front, like a kitten puffing up its fur. Shenmo, holding back his laughter, pushed the wheelchair into a relatively clean stall, and asked Baiyuai, "Do you want to sit or stand to remove your pants?" Baiyuai, clenching her jaw, reluctantly took out a pack from the side pocket and shoved it into Shenmo's hand. "Put this on," she commanded with the haughty air of a queen. Shenmo unwrapped the package, revealing a disposable toilet seat cover. She must have always carried these whenever she went out. He bent down to place the cover, only to turn around and find that Baiyuai was already standing with the aid of her cane. She looked strained, small beads of sweat glistening on the tip of her nose. "Are you sure you don't need my help?" Shenmo eyed her. Baiyuai shot him a look. "Go stand by the door and don't let anyone in." Shenmo asked, "Even women?" She immediately reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, her voice cold and sharp. "Exactly. Women too. Anyone coming in will disrupt my bodily functions. Do I trouble you? Too late to complain now. Grin and bear it. If it weren't for your insistence on dragging me along, I wouldn't have to use the restroom in such a disgusting place." She marched into the stall using her cane and slammed the door shut. She was being extremely rude and unreasonable. Chapter 16 A husband and wife. Shenmo touched his nose, feeling he had been too gentle. Maybe next time he could try being a bit tougher. He left the wheelchair at the entrance of the cubicle and turned to leave. While waiting for her outside the women's restroom, he occasionally heard thuds and bangs, as if a crotch had bumped into something, or perhaps she had knocked against something. What other people might do with ease is a battle for her. His slight annoyance faded gradually. What was there to be upset about? She was just a child, after all. Sickly since young and insecure, she used to live in luxury without a care. Now, however, she had to eke out a living in such times. Her tantrums were understandable. She was only truly powerful in her words. Shenmo stood at the door, listening for noises inside. The sounds of collisions, flushing, rustling of clothes, the crotch scraping the floor and the cubicle door being banged open. Baiyuai emerged, leaning on her crutch, with a tight-knit brow. "Take me to wash my hands quickly. This place stinks to high heaven." Shenmo smiled, walked over and helped her into the wheelchair, then pushed her towards the wash basin. The sensor tap was difficult to operate, and Baiyuai struggled with it unsuccessfully several times, nearly resorting to strong language, when the tap spluttered out a few weak streams of water like an octogenarian lady with a cough. She washed her hands twice with a great deal of distaste, only slightly easing her dark mood. "The facilities here are limited, bear with it for a while. It'll be better once we reach Yangzhou," Shenmo said. Baiyuai grimaced but didn't reply, thinking to herself, it might not be any better in Yangzhou. Shenmo moved to the back of the wheelchair to push her. However, She reached out to grab the hem of his clothing. Her hand was still moist from washing, the pale skin glowed with the remnants of water, the soft and delicate fingers tinted with cherry blossoms. Shenmue glanced at his own hand on the handle of the wheelchair, the distinct joints, the profound texture, every contour and line exuding masculine strength. The same hand, yet so different. The difference of gender reflected in every single detail. Baiyuai frowned while speaking. Are we still going to the supermarket? There's no signal in this service area, and all the food and water have been cleared out. It doesn't feel good. Maybe we should leave soon before it gets dark. It was already dusk, and she didn't want to travel by night. Shenmue contemplated it, then nodded. We won't go to the supermarket then. If we set off now, we should be able to reach Yangzhou before dark. Once they reach Yangzhou, with internet connection and shelter, things would be easier to arrange. The pair returned to the parking area. Unexpectedly, they saw from a distance a man and a woman by their car, waving at them. When they got closer, they could see that the pair were likely middle-aged, looking like an honest and dependable husband and wife. Are you going to Yangzhou? The woman asked kindly. We are also heading there, but there's a blockage ahead, so everyone is staying put for now. It's not safe for you to set off now. Blocked badly? Shenmue asked. The man answered, it's blocked for over 100 meters, the vehicle is full of dolls, no one dares to pass. If the cars can't pass, what about going through a detour on foot? Baiyuai inquired, has anyone tried walking to Yangzhou? The man and woman looked at each other, both seemed a bit lost, apparently they had not considered this. All our things are in the car. The woman spoke hesitantly, food, toiletries, change of clothes. Everything is in the car. The man also added, what if something happens to Yangzhou too? We wouldn't be able to flee without the car. Sometimes a car isn't just a means of transportation, it also functions as a safe haven. Unless a major crisis occurred, people wouldn't just abandon their vehicles. However, in Baiyuai's view, walking to Yangzhou in a matter of several hours was better than being stuck here indefinitely. Besides, they would eventually have to abandon the car. Because if the world continues to spiral into chaos, gasoline would soon become a scarce resource. Chapter 17, Information Exchange. The middle-aged couple assumed Baiyuai was a spoiled young lady who didn't understand the gravity of their circumstances. They didn't take her words to heart. They instead turned to Shenmue to ask, we are about to have a meeting at the restaurant, would you like to join us? Shenmue glanced at Baiyuai and casually asked, what kind of meeting? Just a gathering to discuss and strategize, the couple responded amiably. More hands make lighter work. A group brainstorming can be much more effective than worrying alone. But if you don't want to come, it's absolutely fine, we will not insist. Shenmue nodded, politely saying, all right, we'll join you in a bit. The middle-aged couple, now reassured, didn't say much further and left together. Why are we staying? Are you trying to extract information from them? Baiyuai sneered, disgusted. The supermarket's already empty. They must have been hiding here, eating and drinking for more than a day or two. They don't dare take any risks. Can we really expect them to know anything? Shenmue opened the car door, bent over to lift Baiyuai inside, and then handed her some bread and water. Since the highway is blocked, if we want to get to Yangzhou, our only option is to take a circuitous route. Perhaps by the time we get there, it'll be nightfall. Traveling at night, we wouldn't see the road clearly, making it hard to avoid any dolls. So, it would be better to stay and see what they have to say. Upon hearing this, Baiyuai furrowed her brows, non-committal. She didn't have a good impression of the people at the service area, but given the current situation, it seemed that no matter what decision was made, none would be completely reliable. Chewing some bread, Baiyuai asked Shenmue, do you think any of them have ever completed their game? Shenmue, who was rummaging for something useful in the trunk, looked up at her. What do you think? I think there must be someone, Baiyuai said. Those two just now seemed honest and straightforward, not the type to stir up trouble, but they actively waited for us here. At first glance, they seem warm-hearted, but they seem to me like they're acting on others' orders. Shenmue paused slightly, taken aback. He had suspected this, but he didn't expect Baiyuai to notice these traces. Your observation is accurate. He took out a military blanket from the trunk and spread it on Baiyuai's legs, calmly saying, there must be a leader among these people who wants to gather information. To do so, he needs to constantly make contact with newcomers. As to why he isn't doing it himself, it's easy to understand. By sending over an honest-looking couple, they are more likely to gain trust. Baiyuai looked at him doubtfully, you know something's not right, yet you still want to attend that meeting? Shenmue smiled, not every situation that seems suspicious has malicious intent. They need information, and we need it too. Ever since the tortoise and the hare game, it became clear that not everyone would turn into dolls. Those who completed their game were able to survive. But why doesn't anyone in town know about this? Why wasn't there even a hint of related news? Furthermore, they realized the network connection was interrupted right after they completed their game. Did that imply that all the other winners had gone to places without network signal, and thus couldn't accurately transmit the information? If that was the case, this global catastrophe was far more terrifying than imagined. At 8 p.m., night fell, and only the restaurant remained brightly lit in the entire service area. Shenmue wheeled Baiyuai into the restaurant. The people inside were gathered together. Hearing their entrance, they turned their heads to look. Seeing Shenmue and Baiyuai, they appeared unsurprised and retreated their gazes. The cold, white light flowed from the ceiling, casting deep shadows on their faces. Their similarly apathetic expressions under this light added an eerie sense to the scene. Newcomers? A man with glasses looked up, keeping his tone even. If you wish to join our meeting, you'll have to participate in an information exchange first. Chapter 18, Acting Cute. The man in glasses was seated at the center, appearing to be the speculated leader. However, it seems he's had a rough time. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair greasy, and he looked like he hadn't bathed properly for several days. Shenmue asked, "What is information exchange?" The man gently pushed up his glasses and calmly responded, "You can understand it as information sharing. Each person must express valuable intelligence without any reservation. Only this way can everyone work together on countermeasures. If everyone hides their knowledge, expecting others to solve the problems, that would yield no progress, wouldn't it?" That was true. It was safer and more effective to work together than it was to work alone. Since ancient times, humans have solved innumerable difficulties by working as a team, arguably one of the greatest wisdoms of humanity. However, when more people work together, it's inevitable for some to take advantage of the situation. Baiyuai held her plush rabbit close to her, timidly saying, "But we don't know what kind of information has value." Hearing her suddenly speak softly, Shenmue was taken aback. His hands on the wheelchair rose in goosebumps. Pretending to be innocent, she raised her head and looked at him pitifully. "Brother, do you know?" Shenmue, he was speechless. Perhaps Baiyuai's deceptive appearance was convincing. The man in glasses was receptive, gently explaining, "Don't worry. Since you could get here, you must have encountered those dolls. Anything related to the dolls could be shared. The more detailed, the better. Even if you can't figure something out, sharing it might yield a new perspective." Baiyuai pursed her lips, pretending to ponder deeply. "On our way here, we met a bald man driving a pickup truck. He drove from a road with dolls, unscathed, so we followed behind him. But those who followed later all turned into dolls. So, I think. Are there limits to the number of people? If the number of people is fewer, maybe it's safe to pass?" After finishing, she anxiously looked at the man in glasses. "Is this valuable intelligence?" The man in glasses had a softer expression now. "It counts. Your findings are consistent with our recent observations. Come and sit." Baiyuai visibly relaxed and smiled gratefully at the man in glasses. Seeing her enthusiasm, Shenmue had no choice but to play the part of a taciturn brother and silently wheeled herself closer. The people naturally made room for Baiyuai and Shenmue, indirectly acknowledging the leadership position of the man in glasses. Sitting down in a chair next to the wheelchair, Shenmue stayed silent. Baiyuai looked up naively and asked, "If it's safer to have fewer people, wouldn't it be safer to go alone?" "There are various limiting conditions, and the number of people is just the most obvious one. There could be hidden conditions. After all, the first people who turned into dolls did so while suddenly alone. So for now, it's hard to say." The man in glasses stopped the topic and looked at everyone else. "Let's continue with the previous question. Our colleagues who left to scout today haven't returned yet. What should we do? Do we keep waiting?" All eyes darted around the room. No one spoke for a moment. The man in glasses surveyed the room and firmly stated, "Leaving here outright would definitely hold risks, but the utilities in the rest area could stop at any moment. We won't be able to hold out much longer." "Maybe." Someone began hesitantly, "We could send out a few more people to scout?" The suggestion was immediately dismissed. Who would go? "Those people haven't returned, they may have already died on the road. Who else would dare to go?" "Will you go?" "But we can't just wait here for our deaths." "Perhaps there's no danger, and they've run off." "That's unlikely, their luggage is still in the rest area." Chapter 19. Scouting team chatter broke out among the crowd, giving off the vibe of an impending quarrel. Baiyuai surreptitiously observed the man in glasses, noticing a visible mix of annoyance and contempt in his demeanor. No doubt he was also helpless, having to rely on this group of vulgar and selfish humans for survival. Baiyuai turned her face and gave Shenmue a look that seemed to say, "See, I told you the sponge can't be trusted." Shenmue simply smiled in response, not offering any comments. The so-called strategy discussion gradually devolved. It started as a discussion but eventually degenerated into mutual blame. If not for the man in glasses stepping in occasionally to diffuse the tension, it probably would have escalated into a showdown. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. The most timid were the first to scream. Then someone else cursed, "What are you screaming about? It's just a power outage, don't scare yourself." After a moment, when everyone's eyes had adjusted to the dark, everyone scrambled to leave the restaurant. The man in glasses summoned a couple of people to go check the circuit breaker. Without electricity, everyone idled outside, with nothing to do. Baiyi stared upward, looking at the moon and stars. The vast expanse of the sky covered the earth, quiet and broad, making people seem particularly insignificant under the night sky. The night seemed to contain a mysterious power viewed for a long while, it always left one's heart beating faster. The crowd grew restless. The man in glasses who had left returned and informed everyone that the circuit breaker was fine, the entire service area was out of power. Perhaps soon, even the water supply would be cut off. The atmosphere turned gloomy and suffocating in an instant. Baiyi thought, these people were really hopeless. Apart from the man in glasses, there wasn't another with any initiative. "I say." An old man in the crowd hesitated to speak up, "Why don't we try to find a way out?" A bystander responded, "Professor Ching, haven't we always been trying to get out? What you're saying is basically pointless." The man called Professor Ching, around 60 years of age with streaks of white hair at his temples, thin and wearing an old-fashioned coarse cloth shirt, slightly hunched over, seemed insignificant. After being rebuked, Ching's face turned tomato red with embarrassment, at a loss for words. "What I meant was, we could walk, not drive. Isn't the reason we're stranded here because the road is jammed, and we can't drive past?" The old man gestured with his hand. "We could go two at a time, leaving every 10 minutes. This way, we could avoid ending up as playthings to a large extent." "Professor Ching, please don't add to the confusion. Walk without cars? We have so many people, and luggage. Do you expect us to walk all the way to Yangzhou?" "Exactly, your armchair stratagem simply won't work." Everyone started to chime in, the resentment in their voices escalating, as if they were venting their frustration from the power outage on the old man. The man in glasses remained silent amidst the crowd. Confronted with the old man's pleas for help, he chose to ignore them. Perhaps he also thought there was some truth in the old man's words, but at such a moment, did he have any obligation to help diffuse the crowd's anger? Survival pressures had been accumulating for a while, someone had to serve as the scapegoat for the group's venting. Baiyi did not want to get involved. She mouthed silently to Shenmo, "Let's go." Shenmo stood still. She gently tugged at him again. To her surprise, he stepped forward and said to the complaining crowd, "Everyone, quiet down." Baiyi immediately felt like rolling her eyes. Everyone looked over in unison. She and Shenmo suddenly became the center of attention, feeling like they were being stared at by a crowd of hungry ghosts. It was quite terrifying. But Shenmo did not so much as raise an eyebrow. He calmly said, "It seems a vehicle is arriving." The crowd fell silent. Once the discussion ceased, various sounds in the air became especially clear. The distant rumble came closer. At first, it was like the wind, but as it neared, the noise of the vehicle's tires on the road became clear. Finally, a large vehicle drove into the service area in the dead of the night, its bright headlights shining directly on everyone's brakes. Stopped. A few spry young men jumped down from the vehicle. One of them whistled and said, "Hey, what's going on? Why are you all standing outside?" Chapter 20 Laughing brother. Under the stabbing glare of the car headlights, what should have been an irritating experience, didn't anger anyone. People were overjoyed, rushing up to exclaim, "You're back? The scouts are back. That's great. They're back." The atmosphere suddenly livened up, any previous tension instantly swept away, as if nothing had ever happened. The young man who had been whistling laughed and said, "What's the matter? Did you all think we were dead? Everyone was worried about you guys." "Huh? Why did you change cars?" "Our car broke down halfway. We found this one on the road, otherwise, we would have been back sooner." "But what's going on with you guys? Why are you all outside?" "The power in the rest station went out." "Well then light some candles, there are still plenty of flashlights in the supermarket." Everyone sprang into action, faces beaming with joy as though as long as they had hope, they were full of energy. Power or water outages were just small bumps on the road, nothing to be scared of. After a little while, the lights in the rest station's restaurant came on again. Everyone gathered together, surrounded the return group of young men in the center, eagerly waiting for them to share news from the outside. The most noticeable among them was the man who started whistling as soon as he got out of the car. Everyone called him Brother Laugh. This Brother Laugh was wearing graffiti t-shirt and ripped jeans, an unclear English tattoo on his arm, messy short hair dyed granny gray, and a sparkling earring in his right ear. He was not considered the most noticeable because of his unconventional attire. As a matter of fact, the other young men were all of the same sort. Their tattoos were more dramatic than the others, his jeans had bigger rips. Baiyuai found him memorable mainly due to his disturbingly bright smile. She would smile while talking to Shenmue, and the others in the station would smile while talking to her. Still, their smiles were restrained, modest, and courteous. After all, the backdrop was the end of the world. Who would laugh like an idiot, teeth bared? Even if something quite delightful happened, considering the uncertainty of the future, shouldn't they be a bit melancholic? This brother laugh was perhaps a toothpaste brand spokesperson, his face full of laughter as he passionately recounted his daring ordeal out on the road. As soon as I saw the dolls on the road, I knew something was off. This was our last road. If this road was blocked, would we have to return empty-handed? As the saying goes, heaven never seals off all exits. In a flash of insight, I realized something was not right about these dolls. What was not right? Someone chipped in, just like a comic dialogue. Brother Laugh pointed to his eyes with two fingers, and with a solemn expression, said, these keen eyes noticed that something was unusual. The other boys who accompanied him were all laughing, cracking open melon seeds, and watched him like they were watching a circus monkey. Danzō, aren't you taking this too far? Brother Laugh ignored them, asking the crowd, who knows why we should avoid places with dolls? This still needs to be said? Because they will turn into dolls. Someone immediately replied. Brother Laugh shook his head mysteriously, posing like he wouldn't continue if the answer was wrong. Everyone started catcalling, some longer, some shorter. The glasses-wearing guy also laughed and said unhurriedly, single dolls appearing incidentally usually pose no threat, but if a large number of dolls appear in a certain area, we should be alert. According to the explanation given by experts in the National Scientific Research Institute, the abnormal geomagnetic fluctuations in those areas can have unknown effects on the human body. This is the reason why everyone should avoid dolls. Okay, Danzō, just spit it out, don't sell us any more suspense. Still, the words of the leader seemed to carry some weight. Danzō slapped his thigh like a storyteller clapping a wooden block while right. I'll say it. Under the intense gaze of the crowd, only Baiyuai rolled his eyes in exasperation. Chapter 21, a scene of jubilation. The dolls that appear in large numbers usually have a fixed action, like they're driving, having a meal together, or just standing still. But the dolls we encountered on the road, Danzō squints his eyes, giggles in a low voice, intentionally creating a creepy atmosphere. The dolls we met didn't have a unified action. They were thrown haphazardly on the ground like they were deliberately tossed onto the road. Everyone's eyes widened, looking at each other in disbelief. What do you mean? Someone couldn't comprehend. Why would someone deliberately throw away the dolls? Normal people would be too scared to get close, let alone arrange the dolls in a concentrated area. Considering this could easily mislead visitors. It's because they don't want people to pass through that road, the glasses man casually said. People were shocked by this revelation. Who would do such a thing? Why don't they want people to pass through? What kind of evil mind is that? If I ever meet those people, I will make them regret. Brother Zhao, did you find the people who threw the dolls? Danzō gave a thumbs up, swiped it under his nose with a smug grin. Of course, we not only found them but also taught them a lesson. Guess what? There was a group of people who occupied a food processing factory. There's enough food inside to last for several years. They were scared that others would come and take the resources, so they deliberately scared off passing vehicles by throwing dolls on the road. But I has keen eyes. Hey. My left fist charges like a tiger, and my right leg kicks like a dragon. I beat them until they were searching for their teeth on the ground. Did you see all the stuff on the cars? They are all brought back by Brother Zhao and the others from the factory. Well done. The crowd cheered and applauded. In the corner, Teacher Ching sighed softly, sigh. Those people were also trying to survive. Someone overheard him and scolded, Teacher Ching, look at yourself, are you sympathizing with them again? They almost trapped us. They want to survive, don't we too? Teacher Ching lowered his head without arguing, he sighed long and short, expressing his deep regret at the survival of the fittest situation. This slight disagreement was soon drowned out in the wave of cheers. The glasses man assigned people to unload things from the car, including smoked meat, sausages, sauce-cooked ducks, and piles of vacuum-packed cooked food. The atmosphere was more heated, and everyone was excited as if they were dividing the land seized from a tyrant. Shenmue and Baiyuai also got some food. Perhaps out of sympathy for Baiyuai's disability, she was given an extra sauce-cooked pig's knuckle more than others. After distributing the food, the glasses man asked everyone to rest early and set off as soon as it was dawn. They were finally going to leave the service area where they had been trapped for a long time, Everyone was extremely excited. They assembled the tables and chair from the restaurant into a large makeshift bed, using the thick and wide European-style curtains from inside the restaurant as bed sheets. Men and women, old and young, all lay side by side. Meanwhile, Baiyuai and Shenmo laid on the floor in the neighboring supermarket. The fallen shelves functioned as temporary bed frames, padded with folded cardboard boxes and soft blankets. Though makeshift, it was more comfortable than sleeping in the car. The moonlight silently poured down, and the night was immersed in tranquility. Rustling leaves outside, people tossing and turning inside, the sound of fabric friction was particularly clear. Baiyuai lay quietly, tilting her head slightly. She could see the scene in the restaurant. Some people were browsing pictures of loved ones on their phones, others were whispering about plans after leaving. Their whispers filled the dark, making the night even quieter. Shenmo sat at the other end of the shelf, holding a map he'd found somewhere, carefully reading it in the moonlight. Chapter 22, Tonight's Moon. The moon tonight was unusually bright. It's ironic, the human world gets worse day by day, yet the beauty of nature seems to be growing. No smog, no polluted water and fumes, every day was filled with blue skies, white clouds, and a bright moon. Baiyuai closed her eyes and then opened them again, but sleep evaded her as the events of the day replayed in her mind. "Aren't you going to sleep?" she asked Shenmo softly. "I will sleep once you're asleep," Shenmo replied nonchalantly. He wasn't sleepy yet, and it was awkward for the two to lie side by side because, after all, they have only met today. Baiyuai said, "By the time I fall asleep, it might be too late." Shenmo replied lightly, "During training, I only needed 4 hours of sleep a day." "That's enough." Baiyuai had to admit, this man's physical ability was impressive, carrying her for 3 rounds in the game and barely even breaking a sweat. She closed her eyes again, still unable to sleep. Sitting up after a while, she said, "Let's look at the map together." Shenmo divided the map in half. Suddenly, something soft leaned against his right arm, causing him to pause. "How do you read this?" Baiyuai asked, peering at the map. Her lower body was frail, and she needed support when sitting. It was very hard for her to sit upright. Shenmo's momentarily tense arm relaxed, and he showed her how to read the map. Since the advent of satellite maps on phones, few people studied paper maps, usually only buying them as souvenirs during trips. "This road is the Hushan Expressway, we're approximately here. Starting from this position, the latter part of the journey has traps, so we have to switch to the Hurong Expressway tomorrow. The scouting team that went out today will lead the way from Zhenjiang, detouring to Yangzhou." Shenmo began explaining. Baiyuai looked at the dense paths and the minuscule city names, starting to feel dazed. Despite her best efforts to pay attention, her mind started to wander. Her gaze landed unknowingly on the man's hand. Shenmo had very beautiful hands. His fingers were slender and the joints were distinct. From his solid forearm to his fingertips, the entire hand was streamlined and full of strength. She coveted hands like these. Following his arm up with her gaze, she saw his collarbone, his Adam's apple. The black hair on his forehead cast a shadow over his brows and eyes, leaving only the high nose bridge clearly visible. His soft voice named unfamiliar places. The low tone reminded Baiyuai of a cello from her father's collection. The cello looked at her and asked in a deep voice, "All right?" "Sleepy," she replied, laid back down, grabbed her rabbit plushie as a pillow, and tried to sleep. "Shenmo," after a moment of silence, he folded the map and asked, "Are you cold?" Baiyuai seemed to have already fallen asleep and didn't respond. Shenmo watched her silently for a while, then stood up and walked away. When he left, Baiyuai opened her eyes. Her gaze was serene. Being alone with a man in the middle of the night didn't bother her. But one can't prevent their mind from wandering. The more the mind runs wild, the messier the heart becomes until it spirals out of control. Baiyuai had her fair share of daydreams about heroes saving princesses before her legs were paralyzed. After her paralysis, living a dignified life became her top priority, much more important than love. Plus, this wasn't even love. It was just a coincidence that she found herself in danger, with a man by her side, who happened to be somewhat decent to her. They say that men and women who share life-threatening experiences easily attract each other, regardless of whether it's true or not. It didn't matter. Everything would end once they reach Yangzhou. She closed her eyes, forcing herself to fall asleep. Slow and uncoordinated footsteps came from the direction of the door. It wasn't just one person. Turning her head, Baiyuai saw 3 roguelike young men approaching her. It was the scouting team that had gone out earlier. Chapter 23, Saving Lives. She had anticipated what would happen to her once order collapsed. But she didn't expect it would happen so quickly. The few short steps the stranger took towards her filled her mind with a flurry of thoughts, suddenly recalling many things. She remembered her family doctor, who, at first, she didn't quite understand. But when she did, She reported him to her mother through a phone call. But the doctor turned it around, saying that he was diligent and didn't dare slack off in his work. He claimed that the young Mrs. was trying to intimidate him and was lying on purpose. Her temper indeed wasn't so great. So the doctor's words seemed very convincing. When her mother fired the doctor, she gave him a large sum of money to soothe his wounded spirit from being tormented by the young Mrs. As Baiyoi thought about these past events, she slowly clung to the rabbit. She made up her mind. The three men approached her, leering at her openly. They were unkempt, sleazy, their eyes dull. Not only that, she guessed these men weren't intelligent. Managing to survive so far purely on a kind of ignorant, fearless savagery. Formerly marginalized and despised by society, now they were the leaders of the survival team, receiving respect and adulation. What could make them more inflated than this change of status? Baiyoi propped herself up on her arm and sat up, shouting out in a panicked voice, "What are you going to do? Don't come any closer. Don't come any closer." The neighboring restaurant suddenly fell silent. All the little chatter disappeared, as if everyone had collectively died in their sleep that very instant. "Let me go. Don't. Don't. Help." She struggled valiantly while calling for help in a feeble voice. The metallic shelf beneath her creaked in response to her movements, mixing with the thug's cruel laughter. It rang out clear and grating on this silent night. No one came to her rescue. People are always generous when it doesn't endanger their own interests, but at other times, they demonstrate the height of selfishness and indifference. Perhaps the commotion was too much. A man with glasses cloaked in a coat come over from the restaurant. The thugs halted their actions. One of them, a skinny tall man with a necklace, looked at the man with glasses with especially provocative eyes. He lightly weighed the dagger in his hand, pointing the blade forward, a threatening gesture. The man with glasses glanced at the knife, then at Baiyoi, who was curled up. He frowned, looked away and said, "Keep it down, her brother will be back soon." The skinny tall man chuckled, glanced at his companions with a mocking grin. "Did you all hear that? Boss Zhang told us to keep it down." The other two snickered and intentionally replied aloud, "We heard you. Keep it down." Upon completing their taunts, they burst into laughter, becoming unruly and outrageous. The face of the man with glasses grew darker. But he ultimately didn't say anything further, instead turning back to return to the restaurant, unwilling to meddle in this troublesome affair. "Coward." One of the thugs spat a mouthful of saliva at his retreating figure, his eyes full of contempt. Having successfully challenged the authority of the leader, the thugs felt triumphant. However, they failed to notice Shenmue had returned and was standing at the entrance of the supermarket with a cold expression. Baiyoi, holding the fluffy rabbit, gave Shenmue an almost imperceptible shake of her head. Shenmue's eyebrows knit together as he realized what she was thinking. Earlier, when they had just entered the service area, they had charged the fluffy rabbit for a while. Baiyoi was now probably trying to test the power of the 1/10 of me. But lightning was not easy to control. She didn't have confidence she could strike the thugs as accurately as the inspector. To prevent accidental injuries, she didn't want Shenmue to get close. If the power was not strong enough, it wouldn't be too late for him to step in then. Chapter 24. The brother outside. In short, these three were like lab rats voluntarily walking into a trap. Baiyoi could use them for her experiment. Even if they were to die by mistake, they would have asked for it. Shenmue turned his body away, leaning against the door outside, his brows furrowed tightly, his eyes heavy with irritation. Baiyoi using the ones who offended her for experiments, he didn't object, nor did he have the right to, but she had been crying all along. Of course, he knew her crying was fake, truly she had been performing ever since they arrived at the service area. The reason for his irritation was, she was crying all along, but no one was helping her. Between the supermarket and restaurant was half a wall, and on the other side were almost 30 people, but not even one lent a hand. The harder she cried, the more it highlighted the indifference of people. This feeling truly upset him. "Let her go." Suddenly a low shout, wavering with age, broke the silence of the night. Shenmue raised his eyebrows in surprise, looking in the direction of the voice. Baiyoi, stunned, clenched the rabbit tightly, suppressing the noisy current. An emaciated old man picked up a wooden stick from somewhere, stood with a serious expression in the aisle between the restaurant and supermarket, and loudly accused, "Under the bright sun and moon, and this vast universe, how could you do such things? Don't you all have mothers? Sisters? Daughters? You are utterly lawless. Heartless. What are you trying to do? Let me go, mum." The old man was lifted, and a pig's foot was forcibly stuffed into his mouth. It was Baioi's newly obtained fragrant pig's foot. Even the packaging was not removed. They pushed it in too forcefully, causing a cut at the corner of the old man's mouth. A tall, skinny gangster lightly patted the old man's face, laughing, "Mr. Ching, this is not your classroom. Here, Have a big pig's foot. If your mouth is itchy, just gnaw on it. Then with a push, Mr. Ching staggered back, fell, and couldn't get up due to his trembling legs. Anyone else has a problem? The tall, skinny man walked a few steps forward, casually sweeping his gaze over the restaurant. Anyone wanting to play the hero, come out. It's a rare chance. His companions neared, a dog catching a mouse, busying himself with others' business. Without Brother Hua, you'd still be starving tonight. Ungrateful bunch. Who are you calling ungrateful? Another man leisurely walked in from outside the supermarket. Danzō? The tall, skinny man frowned. Danzō had just returned from the restroom, one hand tucked in his pocket, the other dubbing his grayish hair. He smirked. Brother Hua, you and your pals are quite capable. Bullying women and old folk, how come I never noticed this about you before? Brother Hua's face darkened. Bro, don't ruin the mood. Nope, don't call me bro. Danzō quickly waved his hands. As for me, laughing bro, I rely on my integrity in this world, always straightforward. I dare not make friends like you. The gangsters laughed instead of getting angry. Calling you laughing bro is giving you face, but now it seems you want to lose face? Danzō pointed to his own face, leaning in closer. Here, take my face, take it. Bang. Danzō suddenly made his move, grabbing Brother Hua's head and giving it a hard headbutt. Staggering Brother Hua completely. Damn it. The other two instantly got angry and fought back. Kill him. The three men got into a brawl. Gangsters fighting, devoid of any grace, kicking faces, hitting groins, poking eyes. Each move was extremely rough and crude. Danzō had more cunning tricks than the others. 1 against 2, he actually held up well. But as soon as Brother Hua, who got hit in the head by him, recovered, it turned into 1 against 3, and the situation took a drastic turn. He was pinned down to the ground. Both his hands were twisted behind him, his face was stepped on by Brother Hua's shoe. Tired of living, aren't you, huh? The anti-skid lines on the sole of the shoe left red marks on his skin. Danzō gasped in pain, yelling loudly, brothers outside. Help. What's the wait? Shenmue, Chapter 25, Sons and Daughters of the Jiang. It's often said, the skill of the expert is immediately known the moment they make a move. The moment Shenmue appeared at the door, his tall and straight figure, like a pine tree, caught everyone's attention. Wearing a close-fitting, pure black t-shirt, deep camouflage, special training trousers, and a pair of black army boots firmly planted on the floor, he exuded a silent, intimidating aura. Hua's two henchmen tried to stop him, but there was no fear displayed on Shenmue's face. He punched, grappled, choke-held, his movements were swift and decisive. The goons were left only capable of crying out in agony. Danzō's eyes widened in surprise, temporarily forgetting his humiliation. He muttered, my god, he's really a master. Seeing the grip on Danzō's face relax, the guy stepping on him was next tossed aside by Shenmue, swatted away like a broken kite. Literally swatted away. Although Hua was skinny, he still weighed over 130 to 40 pounds. Can you imagine the strength needed to toss someone like that? Danzō quickly jumped to his feet, placing himself protectively in front of Baiyi, shouting, had enough now, haven't you? Care to try again? His voice rang out defiantly. If you ignored the shoe prints on his face, this posturing was actually rather intimidating. The three thugs helped each other up, each looking more humiliated than the last, realizing they had met their match. Gritting his teeth, Hua shot a look at Shenmue and Danzō and scoffed, he's nothing more than a cripple, not even a woman by count, and you're protecting him like treasure? If you like him so much, you can have him. Baiyi's face became paler, a shadow flitting across her eyes. Try saying that again? Danzō threatened, swinging his fist. A look of panic crossed Hua's face. Gritting his teeth, he limped out of the supermarket with his companions. Once the men were gone, Danzō sidled up to Shenmue, bro. You're amazing. Why did you have to wait until the end to step in? Throwing his arm over Shenmue's shoulder with a mischievous smile, didn't you just want to make a dramatic entrance at the last minute? Don't worry, I get it. Shenmue pushed his hand away, walked over to Baiyi, picked her up, and turned to leave. Cool, Danzō whistled, quickly following and grabbing Shenmue's jacket left behind at the door, yelling as he ran, hey, what's your name? I'm Danzō, what about you? Chasing them to the SUV, he gave Shenmue his jacket. This is yours, right? I saw you left it at the door. Why are you wearing a jacket in this heat? Oh. You wanted to get it for your sister in case she gets cold at night, right? He kept talking, but no one paid him any attention. Shenmue remained aloof and indifferent, while Baiyi stayed silent, wrapped in her own thoughts. Danzō scratched his nose, finding this pair of siblings strange. Feeling a little disheartened, his spirits lifted when Shenmue accepted his jacket with a quiet thank you. Buoyed by the gesture, Danzō grinned, no need to thank me. We, the brothers in the rivers and lakes, stand up for each other when we see injustice. Today I help you, another day you might help me. It's about loyalty. You can count on me whenever you need help, I won't turn you down. He just kept talking non-stop. In the car, Baiyuai moved her lips slightly, muttering, nagging. Shenmue merely glanced at her. Unaware of the situation, Danzō continued to engage Shenmue enthusiastically. If you really want to thank me, I won't refuse your favor. Could you, perhaps, teach me a few moves? He began to mime punching and kicking in the air. Like your moves earlier, they were so powerful. How did you do that? Oh. Aha. Do you think my postures are correct? Shenmue did not feel like talking. Chapter 26, being followed. Shenmue was utterly stuck with his Danzō. Danzō insisted on keeping watch over them during the latter half of the night, arguing determinedly that it was to prevent the same group from returning. Even if they didn't hurt the people, secretly setting fire or puncturing a tire would also be enough to irritate someone. Shenmue wanted to say that given the injuries those guys had sustained, they would at least have to rest for a night before seeking revenge. However, he couldn't stand Danzō's non-stop chattering, so he left him to it. Early in the morning, everyone hit the road. Danzō had stayed up all night and surprisingly was still full of energy. He dragged Teacher Chang out of someone else's vehicle, insisting that the elderly man should ride his motorbike. His motorbike was a mix of goth and punk style, with dangling tassels at the front, a skull sticker at the back, and metallic rivets for decoration on both sides. Teacher Chang repeatedly waved his hands in embarrassment, but Danzō wouldn't let him go no matter what. Baiyuai, who was not far away, watched them coldly. She knew this silly boy's good intentions and that his offer for the old man to ride his motorbike came to protect him. However, he didn't consider that with his old broken motorbike, it would likely jostle him to death. Out of the corner of her eyes, she saw a faint smile playing at the corners of Shenmue's lips. Baiyuai furrowed her brows and asked irritably, "What are you smiling about?" Shenmue, resting his hands on the steering wheel, shook his head indifferently, "Nothing." After a while, he added, "Just wondering whether there are more good people or bad people in this world. If there were more good people, when Baiyuai was in trouble last night, the more than 30 people next door wouldn't have pretended to be asleep. However, if there were more bad people, a weak, thin old man and uneducated punks would not have stepped up either." Baiyuai scoffed, "How old are you to still be thinking about such naive questions?" Shenmue, not taking it to heart, chuckled, "Perhaps all military men are inclined to be idealists." Baiyuai frowned, turned her face away impatiently, and continued to watch the unlikely pair in the distance, a stern older teacher and a wayward young man. What an odd team they made. Are there more good people or bad people in the world? No, neither is more. The majority are ordinary people, whose good and evil tendencies are determined in a moment. They're not purely good, nor thoroughly bad. "Let's have the old man ride in our car," Baiyuai suggested. Shenmue looked at her and eventually nodded gently, yes, to avoid any untoward incidents. He got out of the car and invited Teacher Chang to join them. Danzō, misunderstanding Shenmue's act of gratitude towards Teacher Chang for his right to support the prior night as an act of brotherly loyalty, was overly enthusiastic. He said to Shenmue, "Good man, you're so loyal. Brother Zhao hasn't seen wrong. Rest assured, I will keep an eye on those guys later. They won't dare to pull any tricks while on the road." Shenmue, having nothing to say to him, simply nodded indifferently and helped Teacher Chang get on their vehicle. Teacher Chang was a gentle old man, whose words and demeanor showed the refinement and humility of a scholar. After he got in the car, he thanked Shenmue and Baiyuai politely and introduced himself. "I'm a teacher at Nanjing No. 13 Middle School. My name is Chang Hueco. I teach in the school that is currently closed, so I decided to go to Yangzhou to see my elderly parents who live on Jiao Middle Road. I don't know where you're going, and if it's out of your way, you can drop me off anywhere nearby." Shenmue watched the road ahead and said casually, "We're heading to Jiangnan Road in Yangzhou." "That's perfect." Teacher Chang was delighted. "Jiao Middle Road isn't far from there. It's right on your way." "Thank you so much." From the back seat, Baiyuai gave a sneering laugh. She thought to herself, not only was this military officer an idealist, but he also liked doing good deeds and made sure the beneficiaries didn't feel any obligation. He was incredibly thoughtful. They never intended to go to Jiangnan Road in Yangzhou. However, given the chaos, it didn't matter where they were headed next. Chapter 27, another doll. One by one, the cars gradually left the service area, heading onto the highway. Leading the reconnaissance team at the head of the convoy were Danzō and brother Hueco. Danzō, riding his beloved motorcycle, was weaving agilely among the vehicles. He was full of energy, keeping an eye on road conditions up ahead while also on the lookout for the thugs from yesterday. Whether his vigilance worked, or whether Shenmue had effectively scared them, They were surprisingly well behaved and nothing suspicious occurred during the journey. About an hour into their drive, as they were nearing Zhenjiang, they spotted clusters of figures on the road ahead. Brother Hueco was in the lead and saw them first. Seems like dolls. Must be the guys from the food processing factory again. They keep pulling the same tricks. Those guys have too much time on their hands. We stole their food, probably holding a grudge against us. Ignore them. Just drive straight through. Will there be trouble? TCH. This is the only available route. Even if there is trouble, we'll have to push through. What's there to be afraid of? We have plenty of buffers behind us. Following a brief, simple conversation, they sped up instead of slowing down. The dolls on the road were immediately torn to bits by the onslaught of vehicles, scattered all over the road, battered by the wind. Shenmue noticed something was off. He slowed down and waved at the nearby motorcycle. What's happening? He yelled over the wind. Danzō slowed down too, matching his pace with the SUV. He shouted back to Shenmue, dolls again. It must be the guys from the food processing factory. The factory is nearby. Shenmue frowned, looking at the fallen dolls. He had an indescribable uneasiness. The postures and expressions of the dolls all seemed off, as if being driven by something. Baiyue in the back seat saw it too. She furrowed her brow, staying silent. Suddenly, Danzō burst out cursing, damn it. He revved his motorcycle and charged directly at a doll dressed in a white. I recognize this old lady. She cursed at me yesterday while we were stealing their sausages. How did she become a doll? His face pale, Danzō checked on the other dolls in a hurry, then abruptly turned around, speeding in the opposite direction on the highway. All the people from the food processing factory have turned into dolls. Stop driving forward. Everyone halt. Halt. One after another, vehicles parked along the roadside, the faces of people showing both perplexity and terror. What happened? Apparently dolls appeared up ahead. What should we do? Should we turn around? Turn around? Where else could they go? They had nowhere left to go. After alerting the final car, Danzō parked his motorcycle, looking back toward the front of the convoy, thinking they might have to arrange for the vehicles to scatter. If they stuck together, it would be much easier for trouble to occur. Fortunately, they'd noticed in time. If they had continued to push forward, the outcomes were unthinkable. Just when he was feeling relieved, an odd sound rang out in his ears the next second. Ding. Welcome to the doll game. The theme of this game is Jinkaiu's frog. The rules are as follows. First, refuse to play and transform into a doll. Second, fail the game and transform into a doll. Third, win the game and receive a doll. What? Danzō was shocked and looked around, saying, where is this voice coming from? This familiar announcement rang in Baiyui's and Shenmue's ears at the same time. A piercing white fog shone, forcing them to close their eyes. When they opened them again, the world had once again transformed. This time, they were greeted by a dark cave, a nauseating smell of mud, and an extremely damp atmosphere. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. Cursing non-stop, Danzō leapt up from the mud, furiously questioning, what kind of trap is this? It's not a trap, it's a game. A bespectacled man sitting in the mud, his face a mask of despair and resignation. Don't you know? Here is the doll game. Chapter 28, Conical Space Doll Game? What doll game? Danzō pulled his leg out of the muck, trudging laboriously towards the bespectacled man. Mr. Zhang, what did you mean by what you just said? What doll, what game? I don't understand. The bespectacled man hung his head weakly, his entire being steeped in gloom, his lips rigidly opening and closing. You won't need me to tell you, you will understand soon. I've only experienced it once, that time. There were 16 of us. In the end, I was the only one who survived. Danzō stared at him, his face blank as he scratched the back of his head. Suddenly finding themselves in such a place was like stepping into the nest of an unknown creature. Everyone was shivering in fear, some already whimpering softly. Shenmue scooped Baiyue out of the mud, looking around only to find no suitable place to put her. Everywhere he looked, there was nothing but wet mud, not a single clean spot to step on. Baiyue pointed to a huge snail shell not far away, so Shenmue carried her over through the muddy pits. Whether they had shrunk or the snails had mutated, every single snail here was as big as a double-door refrigerator. After seeing rabbits as large as dogs, such snails didn't seem that extraordinary. Thankfully, only the shells were left, and they were hollow inside. Otherwise, it would have been a horrifying sight. Baiyue sat on the rough surface of the snail shell, her long dress soaked in muddy water. It was heavy and thick, she had to struggle to maintain her balance. The place they were in was a huge mud pit. The surrounding walls were slippery with wet stones. The higher up they were, the narrower they became, until at the center, there was only a small round hole that went straight up like a well. The sunlight seeped through the hole, brightening the middle of the cave, while the surrounding areas were dim. The further away from the hole, the darker it became, with the corners being almost pitch black. In simple terms, this was a conical space filled with mud. After finding a place for Baiyuai, Shenmue helped the teacher who was not far away onto his feet. They had been in the same car, so their landing spots were close. The poor man in his 60s was pale, covered in mud, and his legs were soaking in muddy water. His knees shook uncontrollably. Shenmue helped the teacher onto another snail shell, then looked around again. Other people were also climbing onto snail shells to avoid sitting in the mud. So far, they hadn't seen the inspector. However, this place was large, the light was dim, and there were countless snail shells for cover. Perhaps the inspector was hiding somewhere. Not far away, Dixon and his gang had cornered the spectacled man. The leader, Dixon, held on to Zhang Hua's collar. He spoke with a mixture of intimidation and fear. Zhang Hua, you dare lie to us? Why didn't you mention the game back at the rest stop? They were calling him Director Zhang before, but now used his name. Danzō grabbed Dixon's arm and joined the fray. You dare to start a fight? Not enough of yesterday's beating? Let go of him! Are you deaf? Will you let go? The men staggered and struggled in the mud pit. None of them had the upper hand, and soon they were panting heavily. Zhang Hua, the spectacled man, sat in the mud, watching them as if they were dead men walking. If I had mentioned it before, could we have avoided it? Bastard! Dixon cursed, turning around to climb the slippery stone wall. However, the walls were slick and the ground was made of soft mud, making it impossible to get a grip. Zhang Hua sat in the mud, laughing at them. Don't waste your energy. If I were you, I would take this time to observe the terrain. It would save a lot of trouble when the game starts, instead of waiting around clueless and waiting to die. Who the hell are you saying is going to die? Another punk yelled angrily, stepping forward to teach him a lesson. The light in the cave then suddenly dimmed. Total darkness. Then, a childish voice echoed, "Oh? There are so many players this time." Everyone was taken aback, immediately holding their breath. The rustling sound in the darkness suggested that something was slowly descending from the vertical round hole. Chapter 29, The Golden Ball of the Frog. The darkness lasted only for 5 or 6 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Baiyuai squinted and saw a sphere sliding down from the gap at the top of the cave. Its diameter was a perfect fit with the gap, thus it blocked the only source of light when it came down. After the sphere descended, the light reappeared, and everyone saw a golden sphere hovering under the gap. The sunlight shed on the sphere, making its golden color dazzlingly brilliant and blinding. Hello, everyone. I am the inspector of this game. Welcome to the doll's game. The golden ball was speaking. Its tone of voice was lively and childish, like a 5 or 6-year-old child. It spun around in the air, drifted past each person, stirring up gusts of wind. We have so many players this time. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So many. 28, 29, 30. 33. A total of 33 players for the game. Please play earnestly and try your best to pass. People stared fearfully at the golden sphere, their nerves strained. Even Huich's thugs forgot what they were doing. Why are you all staring at me like that? Hey! That woman, and you, why are you both crying? You should play the game happily. The golden ball twisted, showing no expression, but its tone was incredibly animated. Could it be that you don't want to play? It hummed in displeasure. If you refuse, you'll become dolls. You knew that when you came in, right? You can't refuse to play. Tell us how to play. What are the rules? Zhang Hua stood up, shook off the mud on his glasses, put them back on. His expression was one of indifference, dead sooner or later. I hope it ends soon. He seemed to have given up on struggling. There was not a trace of will to live in his eyes. It will be very quick. The golden ball chuckled. The game duration is only 20 seconds. It will end very quickly. Shenmue furrowed his brow. This place was dimly lit and full of mud everywhere. Whether running or jumping, it would require a lot of effort. If the game time was only 20 seconds, it probably wouldn't be good news for the players. Baiyuai also slightly furrowed her brow. She knew of her own disadvantage. If the game was action-based and had a time limit, she would probably have no choice but to await her fate. No one could carry her anymore. With mud all over the ground, if Shenmue were to carry her, it would just lead to their mutual demise. I'm going to introduce the game rules now. Everyone, listen carefully. I'll only say them once. If you can't remember the rules, you're likely to die. Your translation should closely resemble those of a native English speaker, so please pay close attention to context and nuance. The tone of the O at the end of the sentence was drawn out very long. This kind of childish tone was cringeworthy, but no one cared. At this moment, they were hanging on to every word of the golden ball announcing the rules. It rotated around for a bit first. The golden texture of the sphere sparkled under the light. Have you all seen it? Here, this is a golden ball. In a while, I'll throw the ball from any position, at any angle, and with any force. Your task is to find me within 20 seconds. Caillou spoke with a proud tone. As long as one person finds the ball, everyone can pass. It's easy, isn't it? It's simple and fun. It's even better than the games by other inspectors, right? What constitutes finding it? Tanzhou, like a calf unafraid of a tiger, daringly stood out and asked, does it count if I see it with my eyes? No, that doesn't count. The golden ball floated in the air, moving from side to side, mimicking a human shaking their head. There are 2 criteria to finding the golden ball. 1, your hand must make contact with the ball. 2, the ball must be in a state of rest. It floated a bit higher and said accommodatingly, to help you all understand better, I'll give a demonstration first. Chapter 30, a demonstration. Caillou flitted about the cave, floating up and down restlessly, like a child seeking an ideal spot for a game of hide-and-seek. So childish. I found it a bit of a farce. Although the rabbit-headed figure from the previous game also felt like a comedy act, at least it was calm and composed, and its actions carried an impression of rigid, programmed directives. It seemed like it was merely following protocol, wasted no words, and revealed no emotions. But what was the deal with this golden sphere now? Such an object appearing in this life-or-death situation was quite vexing. Shenmue whispered to her, it doesn't sound too difficult, just having one person find the ball will end the game. But earlier on our way here, there were quite a few dead players. In other words, all those people had lost their lives in this game. If it was such a simple game, why did so many people die? I carelessly quipped, having a race with a rabbit doesn't sound difficult either. Didn't many people die anyways? Shenmue fell silent for a moment before asking, could we use the rabbit? I glanced at him, not responding immediately. Gently squeezing the stuffed rabbit's ears in her hand, mud dripped down with each squeeze. I wouldn't dare use it, she murmured. Leave aside whether the rabbit had enough electricity, just considering the mud-filled environment was enough to deter her. Who could guarantee that a lightning strike wouldn't char all the players to a crisp? She didn't care about the others, but Shenmue had to survive. Seeing her like this, Shenmue didn't say any more. He just quietly told her, keep the starting gun close. I obediently responded, okay. The starting gun wasn't actually of much use in this place, but it was better than nothing. At least she had something to rely on. Meanwhile, Shenmue tucked Bei's folded fruit knife into his waistband behind him. My military knife disappeared when we entered the game, he said quietly. From the look of things, any obvious weapon will be shielded by this game. The inspector must ensure the game goes smoothly, Bei sneered. First, they meticulously ensure the player's personal safety, then cruelly snatch away their lives. Just like the game's name, Puppet Game. All entrants are just puppets in the game, with no rights, no individuality, no freedom. Alrighty. I choose this spot. The childlike voice rang out again. After some indecisiveness, Caillou finally chose a location. Everyone's heart pounded in their chest. Caillou was seen hanging above a middle-aged, fat man's head, roughly halfway between the cave ceiling and the mud pit. Watch closely. Once I'm done demonstrating, the game will officially start. Remember, you only have 20 seconds to find the ball. Caillou's voice rang out loud. Here goes, I'm going to launch it. All eyes focused on the sphere. Boom. The ball left a streak in its wake. With unimaginable speed and force, it struck the mud pit, spraying mud and water 3 meters in the air. The faces of all the spectators turned ashen. But the ball didn't stop. After hitting the mud, it bounced up high again, striking the solid cave wall with a metallic resonance! Thud 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 thud. A series of rebounds ensued. Spouts of dark mud erupted, each followed by the deafening impact sound. The occasional unpredictable ricochet was nothing short of a boulder tumbling down a mountain path. A young woman screamed, clutching her head as she tumbled down into a shellfish-like structure. Caillou missed her head by a hair's breadth and smashed into another structure, ricocheting into the unknown. The entire cave reverberated with the thudding noises incessantly echoing. When everything finally stopped, the cave bore an entirely different scene. It looked as horrific as an exploded juicer.